Sure it's not working. It looks like it's working.
Okay. Let's call this June meeting of the Colorado State Land Board to order. And I would like to do a roll call. Mr. Chavez?
Here.
Mr. Heath?
Here.
Mr. Scanlon? Here. Commissioner Clark? Here. And the chair is here, so we have full complement. Before we get into other business, I'd like to mention that the board was on tour with staff yesterday in Eastern Colorado. We had the privilege of seeing one of the best schools that received a large grant from us. They're in the middle of finishing up, racing the clock to get everything done by the beginning of the new school year. Walden Valley, not far from Fort Morgan, and it was really a delight to see our dollars at work and to meet the team that's delivering education to all these students. It was really wonderful. Another interesting aspect of that was our visit to Rodeo Dunes, which is the Bandon Dunes type golf course development on our land outside of Rogan. So it was a very interesting day, and staff did a wonderful job curating it and getting us back on time. So now maybe for some logistics, Nick, you want to run through the format and the agenda of the meeting?
You bet. For the record, this is Interim Director Nick Massey. Folks listening along online and folks in the room, welcome. Good morning. We've got a busy day lined up. We are trying to run some things out of normal order for us. We anticipate a fairly robust public participation this morning. And so, first of all, we are asking for patience and decorum. I think we've been handing out and we've made known some of the rules that we expect for participation in this meeting this morning. If at any point comments become unacceptable, and we've kind of defined what unacceptable comments might be, we're going to ask politely and then a little bit more urgently that you change the way you're behaving in the meeting. I want to put that out there, not expecting anything in particular, but just being sure and careful that expectations are set. I mentioned that we're running a little bit out of our typical order. So this morning we're going to open up with public session right off the bat. That means that the public can listen along, and there are opportunities for the public to engage with the board officially. So we are going to start with a final action item, which is the appointment of the director of the State Land Board. Final action items do allow for public comment, and we do anticipate a fair bit of public comment during that item. So for us to get into that, we may have a little bit of discussion, but if at some point we'll have a motion from the board that will allow some further discussion. Then we'll invite public comment, and then we'll have a vote. During public comment, we do anticipate a fair number of comments to be made. So we are asking folks to limit comments to 2 minutes. It's a fairly short window, but we'd like to give a number of voices an opportunity to be heard. If you submitted written comments through our online tools, we would ask that you try to make space for folks who haven't done that. We're not going to enforce that very strongly, I don't think, but please allow for a plurality of voices to be heard. We will probably bounce around a little bit within public comment. If commentary seems to be largely along one train of thought, we are going to make sure that we poll the audience for perhaps alternating contributions, different viewpoints, different opinions. All of this is to say, again, this is really complicated this morning, so give us patience. We are a small team. We have a small team of people who are working very hard to make this as smooth as possible, so we appreciate your patience. Some other things that are going to happen is because we're opening first in public session today, we are actually going to have to end this meeting on Zoom before we go into an executive session, at which point anybody participating online will have to rejoin the meeting. You can use the same links that you've been provided or used to get to the registration page. But for us to effectively lock down a meeting into executive session virtually, we have to end the first meeting and restart a new one. It's all the same links. It's all the same registration. It's all the same participation. But this is just a limitation of the technology that we're using. I'm going to make that announcement probably one more time before we get there. I don't want anyone to feel as though we're being deceptive or non-supportive of virtual participation. It's really important to us. And we just want to get it right. And to do that, we just need to work with the tools we've got. So these first items, I also mentioned for the board's benefit that we do not have PowerPoint presentations for our first two items of the day. We are verbal only. And what am I missing?
That we had, I think we were going to acknowledge we've had a substantial agenda change on the final action items.
Yep, thank you. So the point to make is that we published our board packet roughly a week early, as we normally do. And in the last 24 hours, we made a slight amendment to the agenda. Originally, the item that was on the agenda for action of extending a geothermal exploration lease as an action item has been changed to an information item. Our practice is that we do not take public comment on information items. Information items are for the information of the board alone. The board may discuss, the board may have questions for participants in that piece of business, but it's not a place that we accept public comment. I understand that some folks planning to participate today were hoping to make public comment on the original version of that item. And please accept my apologies. I can understand if it's been, if that perhaps provides some frustration, but this is just a change in the order of things, and we're going to proceed in our normal way of operating for that as an information item. That being said, it's still in roughly the same place on the agenda, so it's second on the agenda for today. We published that agenda modification. We have a mailing list that folks can sign up for, and it was published to that mailing list. It's been on our webpage for the last roughly 18 hours. And then there are paper copies of the change to the agenda available here in the room. I think that's what I wanted to say about that.
Just, yeah.
Yes, Commissioner
Nick,
Scanlon?
just for the benefit of the public, is there an anticipated date or time when that might come back as a final action item?
I'm going to lean on staff for their brief presentation about what's happening with that, to have the board have a sense of what's going to happen next. But there's no specific date currently lined up for any further future action.
Madam Chair, would it be possible to rearrange the agenda to put the executive session at the end so that we don't inconvenience folks who are online and have to get back on and off? I mean, if we could do that at the very end, then we wouldn't have to cause an interruption of the meeting.
Commissioner, there's a business item that staff feels requires an executive session advisory. So no matter where we put the executive session, we will have to do this back and forth.
Could we move that item and reconvene at the end? It just feels like it's unfortunate to make people wait through something that doesn't relate to as much public comment.
I wonder whether or not we could revise the agenda to push the executive session and the final action item or not, yeah, the action item on that, and along with the staff report and DNR updates. So we could push it further back in the agenda, but still accomplish the information transfer and then the decision.
It's at the board's discretion.
So I request my colleagues to consider that.
Is there any challenge with that, the rest of you? So for clarity, we'd like to amend the agenda to move the executive session to follow. Information, I'm just trying to think where we might want to find. So following the final action of everything besides, we'll call out the Lahara final action. And we will move the executive session to follow, for simplicity, to follow the minutes. We will move to executive session then. We will then come back into public session for one remaining action item on Lahara and the section 3 with information items.
That we can make that work, and overall the timing stays the same. So our folks that, well, Ms. Romero-Heaney, her timing would remain the same, so I think she'd be okay with
Yes, she was.
what she's planning for as well. So
Yes. All right, so let's,
Thank you
for bringing it up, Commissioner. All right. Thank you. And as we do anticipate a fair amount of discussion on this first action item, I'd like to echo what Interim Director Massey mentioned and say, the point of public comment in this sort of session is really to capture a diverse set of opinions and perspectives. And that's our objective. I want to thank very much and remind people in the audience here and online that the written comments, it may seem that they're delivered and put into the abyss, but I assure you that is not the case. We welcome the written comments. We get them ahead of time. We are able to review them and consider them in a way that sometimes is not even possible at a public meeting. So I'd like to thank all the respondents who provided comments that were batched up and delivered to the commissioners, and assure you that we've read them and considered them and appreciate the time you've taken to put those out there. I'd also like to say, as Commissioner or as Interim Director Massey said, that we intend to support and accommodate opinions and discussion here in a respectful and professional way. So we would like to hear from people, and we also believe that the way opinions are delivered matters. And so we look to all of you to share your opinions in a respectful way. So with that, I'd like to open up this action item and first look to my fellow commissioners. Is there anyone who has any question or comment, since we don't have a presentation? You'll have certainly a chance for more discussion once we've heard from the public, but is there anything anyone would like to say before we start? Well, I'd like to open the public's session around the action item of appointing the new director of the State Land Board, candidate Nicole Rosemarine. So members of the public here in this meeting, we're going to start with you. So if you'd raise your hand and we can have you come up and introduce yourself for the record and make your comments.
yeah, so just to alliterate that slightly, it's really critical that anybody who speaks nice and clear. The mics are around the bull ring here of tables, and they pick up pretty well. But we do like some additional details. Your full name, perhaps where you're from in the state. If you're representing an organization, please state that clearly. And that's kind of the rules. And again, happy to help folks remember good decorum. And I'm gonna run a timer on my phone to the best of my ability to try to keep comments to 2 minutes. But I don't have a shepherd's hook, so I won't be yanking anybody off the stage directly. But so yeah.
So welcome
Anybody,
anyone who'd like to.
feel free to raise hands and perhaps we'll just identify the first person to raise a hand to make a comment. So now's the time to do that.
And we'll be monitoring online as well.
Morning, Commissioners, and I want to thank you for your time, dedication, and service, which I know is substantial, in addition to the other good work that all of you do. My name is Shepard Neville, and I had the pleasure of working closely with and supervising your finalist for the role of State Land Board Director for 2 years in your current position. And I had the opportunity to witness daily the high-level professionalism that Nicole demonstrated in virtually hundreds of encounters and situations. So Nicole, in my view, exemplifies the qualities that you highlighted in your excellent job description on leadership, planning, policy development, and personnel management. Her subject matter experience and knowledge is well established, so I thought I would really focus on Nicole's working style because I know that's very important. Nicole, time and time again, has demonstrated a deep commitment to collaboration, finding common ground, and building consensus. In moments of tension and disagreement, and there is no shortage of either in her current position and in this position, Nicole brings an impressive calm and focus. She looks to fuse tensions and to find a constructive path forward. When this policy decision is made, she will implement it effectively and in good faith. And speaking of that, Nicole's project management and execution skills are really first rate. And sometimes we underappreciate the importance of execution. I would also underscore her interpersonal manner. She is generous with her time and supportive of colleagues who value and really enjoy working with her across the board. She's widely recognized for being hardworking, highly productive, and bringing integrity and a joyful spirit to even the most difficult work. You will find in Nicole somebody who reaches out to all stakeholders and will listen genuinely and deeply. I've seen this firsthand. She's someone you can confidently trust to uphold all of the board's constitutional and fiduciary duties, including, apropos to your visit that you mentioned, generating consistent revenue for public schools through working lands. She does not see agriculture and conservation as opposing forces. She sees a partnership, which after all is the Colorado way. She values the agricultural industry deeply and is deeply committed through many conversations I've seen this to the economic resilience and success of rural communities. And she respects Colorado's longstanding model of multiple use stewardship. I've always taken hiring very seriously. I know you do as well. And I enthusiastically recommend Nicole for appointment as director of the State Land Board. I believe she will serve the mission and the mandate of the land board with distinction and honor. And I thank you for your.
Where do you work right now?
I run an Institute of Evidence-Based Policymaking, so we provide evidence-based research.
Thank you.
Stand. All right, I'll go.
Good morning. My name is Martin Hertz. My background is commercial real estate investments. I'm currently retired. I know Nicole through being a volunteer for Southern Plains Land Trust, the nonprofit that she was affiliated with up to a few years ago. And I used to be her neighbor in Centennial. I currently live in Denver, previously lived in Centennial. I remember talking to Nicole when she put her house on the market and decided to move down to Heartland Preserve outside of Lamar. And I asked her why she was doing that. And she said, well, for Southern Plains Land Trust to succeed, you have to be part of the community. You cannot do everything from Denver. You will not be respected. You will not be able to she will not get the mission of the nonprofit done from Centennial. So she picked up and moved. I'm an admirer of what she's done. I mean, when we worked together on the Heartland Preserve expansion, and there's a number of times where I said, well, it might be easier to just work with someone up here in Denver, and she was adamant, like, no, we're going to work with folks that are down here in Lamar. Our financing came through the Farm Credit Office in Lamar. title survey was all done out of there. And I think that relationship has paid off for Southern Plains Land Trust. They have now done another preserve called the Purgatory Reserve, and they were able to get a list of supporting letters from the mayor of Los Animas, the Bent County Commissioner, various groups down there. And I think that's came through her being embedded out there as opposed to doing things from up here. I'm also impressed by what she was able to do in terms of growing that organization. I look back in 2013, that land trust had a staff of one, I think over there, and I think it said 170,000 revenue. The year she left, staff of 5, about 4 million revenue. And most all of that dollars stayed down in Bent County. It was reinvested back in the community. The jobs are primarily down there. I think all down there. She's also, if you ask around the nonprofit community and open space, and you ask who's the expert in using carbon credits and coming up with new ways to do transactions, well, that's Nicole. I understand the board's been looking at doing tapping into the carbon markets. Well, she's Southern Plains Land Trust has been doing that for years. And also, I having coming from commercial real estate and working with for-profit developers, I'm impressed with her entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, for her to step in and say, you know what, we're going to go do an $8 million transaction without all the pieces coming together takes some guts. But she did it. The transaction closed on time at the dollars, at the sales price. And she actually, Southern Plains Land Trust paid back the loans actually early. I was very impressed by that.
Give you a wrap, please.
Yeah. So, in short, I think does a great job of collaborating. I think she knows the only way to get the mission done is to work with other people. You cannot do it alone. She's done great in terms of driving economic activity, particularly for Southeast Colorado. And I think she'll do a good job. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thanks. Anyone else in the room? Please. And for those timing along on their own, I have allowed a little bit of extra time for our first 2 speakers, so I'll stay consistent with that for upcoming speakers.
Thank you. Your deal said 3 minutes, so I kept it to that.
Fair enough.
Good morning. I'm Curtis Russell, President-elect of the Colorado Cattlemen's Association and a longtime Southeast Colorado rancher, deeply invested in the future of our lands, our school trust, and our rural communities. As a sole finalist for director of the Colorado State Land Board, Nicole Rosmarino brings a record steeped not in agriculture, but in radical rewilding activism. She founded the Southern Plains Land Trust and served on the Rewilding Institute's Leadership Council, organizations that routinely purchase formerly productive ranch land and repurpose it as wildlife refuge rather than support agriculture. Successful stewardship of the 2.8 million surface acres and $300 million of annual income for the school trust demands someone with business acumen, deep understanding of ranching, agriculture, mineral leases, and a proven dedication to these income streams. Ms. Rosmarino's past statements raise grave alarms. Not only has she publicly celebrated acts of ecoterrorism, but has declared that profits ahead of wildlife will not be tolerated. The fiduciary responsibility of the State Land Board has everything to do with profits for the school trust and stewardship of the land. In recent days, Ms. Rosmarino has made statements claiming support for agriculture and working lands. She is asked not to be judged by her words of 27 years ago, but many of her statements are much more recent. In 2018, she wrote an article for the Rewilding Institute in which she celebrated Dr. Edward Wilson's advocacy for preserving in refuges 50% of the Earth's lands. By refuge, she explains that means no hunting of native wildlife. Can you imagine the economic losses to the state of Colorado if half its lands were excluded from any hunting? The devastation to rural communities by preserving half of the working lands that produce food, wildlife habitat, and livelihoods, not just to farmers and ranchers, but to the many small town businesses and schools that depend on their trade would be immense. If Ms. Rosmarino is appointed, she must be held fully accountable to those most recent commitments, not just in words, but in action. The livelihoods of thousands of ranching families and their communities and the very integrity of our state trust depend on it. This isn't about politics, it's about fiduciary responsibility. It's about upholding the constitutionally mandated goals of the State Land Board, generate reasonable, consistent income, and support working lands for the benefit of children's education. At this decisive moment, I urge the board and governor's office to reconsider. Colorado's future deserves a director who champions, not impedes, agriculture, ranching, and sound financial stewardship. Thank you.
You.
Folks listening along online, I do understand that our video feed is a little choppy, but it sounds like the audio is going okay. We're gonna stick with that because touching that computer at any point this morning is a wish for doom. So bear with us, but hopefully the audio is coming through pretty well.
Good morning. My name is Janie Van Winkle. I'm a beef producer from Western Colorado. I'm also the Federal Fellow for the Agro-West Initiative at the Grand Junction Business Incubator Center, which is part of the Economic Development Administration. I'm also a past president of Colorado Cattlemen's Association, and I'm here representing them today. We don't lease any state land in our ag enterprises. I'm here today because I know how important the continued relationship between the state of Colorado and the Eastern Plains producers is. While serving as president of CCA a few years back, I had the opportunity to engage with the ranchers and the farmers currently stewarding these landscapes. I heard their stories of generations before them and how their families have cared for the livestock and how strong the impact of their businesses is on the economics and the character of their rural communities. We are concerned regarding the new State Land Board leadership that would not allow these businesses to continue to operate. To remove agriculture families and replace with untested and politicized models could, number one, decrease the land health. As a producer, that's always one of my biggest concerns. It could negatively impact rural communities. As someone who's grown up out in the boonies in Western Colorado, that's extremely important to me as well. It could break decades-long successful partnerships. And as a member of the Western Colorado ag community and being aware of the critical juncture we're at with Colorado Parks and Wildlife and that relationship, that's one of my, I will tell you, that's one of my gravest concerns is the relationship that I hear about from our producers here on the Eastern Slope and the State Land Board. And the fourth piece is that it violates the constitutional mandate for state lands to generate income for schools. And there's several schools that I'm acquainted with on the Western Slope who have benefited from the BEST grants. We ask the board to view producers as partners, not placeholders. Agriculture is a long-standing, resilient, and proven solution to landscape management. We are here. We are ready to partner with the State Land Board to ensure Colorado's trust lands serve current and future generations in Colorado. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? I'm not seeing any raised hands at this point, so it looks like we'll move online. And Alec, if you'll take over for us.
Yes, we've got two folks with their hands raised online. If there's anybody else in the viewing online, please raise your hand. We'll start with who raised their hand first. Jen Callahan, I'll be moving you over to a panelist. And here in a second, you'll be able to turn your camera and microphone on and address the board.
Morning, can you hear me okay?
We sure can. Thanks.
Great, thank you. My name is Jen Clanahan. I'm the Executive Director for the Colorado Nature League. We are a statewide coalition of sports people, scientists, conservationists, and nonprofit organizations advocating for biodiversity, wildlife, and wildlife habitat. Through our member organizations, we represent more than 200,000 households in Colorado. And I thank you for the opportunity to give comments this morning in support of Dr. Nicole Rose Marino. Dr. Rose Marino is an exceptional candidate to be the next director of the Colorado State Land Board. Under Nicole's leadership as the executive director of the Southern Plains Land Trust, Split expanded its preserve network from 3,300 acres to over 56,000 acres. The organization's total assets grew significantly, and she led and completed dozens of complex real estate transactions. These transactions acquired land for permanent protection while also balancing habitat restoration with rural landowner interests. Nicole has collaborated with agricultural producers and rural stakeholders for years, protecting working lands. She successfully brought financial innovation to land stewardship in Colorado. She also brings hands-on experience and stewardship experience. In her current role as Governor Polis's Senior Policy Advisor for Wildlife, Agriculture, and Rural Economic Development, Nicole is a recognized state leader who is constantly balancing the considerations of biodiversity, renewable energy, rural economics, and food systems key sectors. I have worked with Nicole personally and found her to be intelligent, thoughtful, hardworking, and balanced in her approach. Her combination of qualifications, including nearly 30 years of experience in natural resource policy, public land management, real estate transactions, conservation finance, and collaboration with agricultural producers and rural communities, makes her an excellent candidate. Nicole's knowledge and experience are unmatched, and Colorado would be lucky to have her at the helm as the next director of the State Land Board. I respectfully urge a yes vote. Thank you so much. I do also, if I could, Eric Washburn, a colleague, had hoped to join today. He was going to read for this morning's discussion an op-ed that he wrote and is published today in the Grand Junction Daily Sentinel, and had a last-minute conflict. I wonder if I could read his op-ed on his behalf.
I think so.
Would that
You
be
get this
okay?
spot.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It is longer than 2 minutes.
Is it less than 3?
It's more like 4, I think, if you read it out loud.
Commissioner, it's up to you.
Talk fast.
Okay. And I'll try and there's a little explanation about the State Land Board. I'll skip over that part because obviously you all are very familiar. All right. This intro part is about the State Land Board, the many acres you manage. That is the primary funding source for BEST. Okay, my interest in the work of the State Land Board stems from being a big game hunter and angler, and I am personally grateful that the SLB, through its hunting and fishing access program and in partnership with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, allows access by the public to nearly 1 million acres of state lands for the purpose of hunting and angling. Hunting and fishing on state lands is a tradition that I am keen to see continue. It can be tough for Colorado sportsmen and sportswomen to find public lands on which to hunt and fish that are not already inundated with other hunters and anglers. Wildlife watchers and recreators and the state trust lands that have been made available for this purpose help reduce congestion and improve outdoor experiences for everyone. The process for selecting a new SLB director has been extensive. It then speaks about the process, which you all are familiar with, so I will skip over that. At the end of this highly competitive process, Dr. Nicole Rose Marino was selected as the best candidate to be the next SLB director. On June 12th, they will consider her nomination. Dr. Rose Marino is exceptionally well qualified to be the next director of the SLB and deserves to be unanimously approved. She holds a master's degree and a PhD from the University of Colorado. For the last few years, she has been a senior policy advisor for wildlife, agriculture, and rural economic development to Governor Polis, working closely with a wide range of stakeholders and state agencies to help solve Colorado's natural resource management challenges. Many of the issues on which she has advised the governor are central to the mission of the SLB, promoting sustainable agriculture, developing renewable energy projects, providing public access for hunting, fishing, and other forms of recreation, conserving land and water resources, and protecting wildlife. Prior to joining the governor's office, she led the Southern Plains Land Trust, where she dramatically grew the organization's budget. One of the ways she accomplished this remarkable feat was by establishing a carbon credit program at Split, beginning in 2016 using the Climate Action Reserve's U.S. Grassland Protocol. Through her leadership, Split generated over $1 million in revenue from 7 projects that she developed to prevent grasslands conversion and thus retained carbon in the soils, thereby generating marketable carbon credits. She used money from the sale of carbon credits along with conservation easement tax credits and other sources of revenue to acquire additional lands for the trust, thus enabling it to further grow its carbon credit-based revenue. Dr. Rose Marino has demonstrated exactly the sort of visionary entrepreneurial leadership that SLB needs as it balances the many important uses of its land and mineral estate while increasing revenue for Colorado's public schools. I look forward to her tenure as the next leader of this critically important agency. Eric Washburn is a 5th-generation Coloradan and big game hunter who lives in Steamboat Springs.
Hold it off.
That's it. Thank you so much for allowing me to read that on his behalf.
Thank you. Alec, if you'll keep us moving on
I
that.
didn't get the name of the person who.
Eric Washburn.
Our next online commenter is Mike Saul. I will be moving you over to a panelist position.
Hold on. So we've got I see a phone number ahead of Michael Saul. Do you?
Yes, there is a phone number with a hand raised 303 number ending in 782. I can push allow to talk, Nick. I cannot promote a phone number to panelist.
Okay. You got
Okay. Phone number ending in 782. It is your turn to speak. You are allowed to talk now. Phone number ending in 782.
Hello,
We can hear you.
can you hear me? Oh, good, thank you. I appreciate it. My name is Corey Gaines. I'm a resident of Sterling, Colorado. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for years, more years than I'd care to count. I emailed you. I won't retread a lot of that same ground here, but I am speaking in opposition to, to Dr. Rose Marino's appointment today. Dr. Rose Marino is an extremist. If you look at what she said, and this goes even as recent as 2024, her statements don't give me faith that she will be able to manage this institute in the way it needs to be managed. And this is something near and dear to my heart because as somebody who has worked as an educator, having money for schools is quite important. And as a matter of fact, RE1 Valley, my local district, is trying to get best grants right now and to try and update their buildings. I also have some grave concerns about Dr. Rose Marino's ability to work with the people that she will be required to work with. She'll be required to work with people whose industries and motives she has disparaged more than once in the past. This does not, again, give me confidence that there's going to be smooth operation here. It's my understanding, I heard from the press person at DNR that Dr. Rose Marino was the sole finalist out of a national search. And I find that baffling because I cannot fathom how someone with her views, someone who has made the statement she's made in the past, could, out of an entire nation, be the best candidate for this job. I urge you to vote no. And I do have a couple of questions for the interim director. The first being, as someone who's been booted from a CPW committee meeting illegally, I would like to email you so I could get a look at what your rules as to what's allowed to be said and what's not. And then the second thing is, I wonder if I might have the opportunity to read an op-ed by Rachel Gable into the record.
How long might that op-ed be, Corey?
I need to call it up on my computer so I could wait until the end of the line. I do have to go teach a class here in a little bit. My guess is probably not much longer than the other one.
Then you have it at the ready, or is this a few minutes of preparation, in which case we will come back to you and hear another speaker?
Actually, in the interim, I was able to get this called up. And I won't read the entire thing. I won't take any more time than was given the person before me.
Sounds like we're
Yes, yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Gaines, go ahead.
Please proceed.
Thank you.
And let us
This
know
is-
where this was published.
Certainly. This is a Colorado Politics opinion piece by Rachel Gable. It was published on May 26, 2025, and it's listed as being updated on May 30th. Rachel Gable goes in and talks about the Vail resorts and the history of the eco-terrorism that happened there. And that's where I'll begin. In 1998, Vail Resorts was on the cusp of developing 2,200 acres of backcountry. The plan riled activists, especially those devoted to preserving the habitat of elk and Canada lynx that thrived there before development came to town. Members of the radical Earth Liberation Front and now defunct Rocky Mountain Animal Defense marched and chanted through Vail with police on their tails wielding decibel markers. A lot of the quotes I'm going to read you from Dr. Rose Marino are from a 1998 reporting by Alex Markles, who wrote for, I believe it was Mother Jones. Nicole Rose Marino, the sole finalist for the director of the Colorado State Land Board job, was a University of Colorado grad student at the time and wildlife coordinator for RMAD. She told the reporters that she was one of a new breed of animal and environmental rights activists and said she had absolute adoration, even quasi-worship for wildlife. She too marched in the streets, and during the above-mentioned fur coat altercation, I won't go into details there, reportedly refused to calm the other activists involved. She told a reporter she had no problem with RMAD activists telling that lady off. That's why the lynx are in the shape they're in, and I'm disappointed in environmentalists who can't see that. Further quotes from Rose Marino are calling the Vail arson one of the most beautiful acts of economic sabotage ever in this state. She also told the reporter she was jumping up and down with delight. This was not terrorism, I'm quoting Dr. Rose Marino. It was economic sabotage, and it did more for the cause than anything that came before it. The reaction from those who purport to speak for wildlife is really a reaction of fear. If they don't have the courage to light the match, that's fine. But to attack those who did is sheer hypocrisy. I will end there, and thank you for giving me the extra time.
Thank you. And did you mention where this was published originally? You mentioned the author.
We can follow up on
Okay.
that. I believe it was
Okay,
Fence-
sorry about that.
What?
Fence post.
Fence post. Okay, got it. Thanks, Corey. Confirmed.
Actually, I'm sorry, it was Colorado Politics, ma'am.
Sorry.
Okay. All right,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much for taking the time to make a comment. We appreciate it.
All right, our next commenter online is Michael Saul. You have been promoted to panelist. When you get into the meeting as a panelist, please unmute yourself and address the board.
Good morning, commissioners, interim director. Can you hear me?
We
Yes.
can.
Thanks for the opportunity to address this commission and thank you for your service. My name is Michael Saul. I'm a resident of Denver, Colorado, and I am the Rocky Mountains and Great Plains Regional Director for Defenders of Wildlife, a nonprofit national organization dedicated to the collaborative conservation of native and endangered wildlife. A longtime colleague of Dr. Rose Marino, and I and my staff have had the privilege of working with Dr. Rose Marino in her capacities at the governor's office as director of Southern Plains Land Trust, which we've worked with very closely, and even before. And I am here to offer my enthusiastic endorsement of a vote for her as director of the board. She would bring such a high level of competence, integrity and openness to the position. And I urge you all to support DNR's well-considered recommendation. And I just want to speak from personal experience here, because a lot of invective is being thrown at Dr. Rose Marino for a few out of context and somewhat inflammatory quotes from when she was a very young graduate student, and they just don't make any sense to anyone who's actually had the opportunity to work with Dr. Rose Marino over the past 20 years or so. She is absolutely dedicated to a sustainable future for Colorado communities and schools that involves thriving agriculture and natural resources. And she brings an important academic and professional perspective that the health of land and sustainable revenue, both for Colorado schools and Colorado rural communities, are intimately tied together. And she brings an essential knowledge as this board and this state face the challenges for agriculture that an inexorably changing climate bring in the 21st century. She realizes the importance of agriculture, not just in short-term economic gain, but in long-term land health and carbon sequestration. She is also an eminently consensus-based and evidence-based decision maker. She goes into policy decisions not with a political or foregone outcome, but to listen to all the stakeholders, weigh the evidence, and work to find win-win solutions. And that's the reality of her work and her record at Split and in state service. And as I've worked with her, my staff has worked with her extensively, and that's our personal experience. And I would just say she is eminently well qualified by education, experience, and temperament to lead this board in the 21st century. And I would just urge a unanimous vote in favor of DNR's recommendation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
All right. Our next online commenter is Kim McDonald. Kim, you'll be promoted to panelist. Please unmute your microphone and you'll be able to address the board.
Good morning. You can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, commissioners, and I want to thank you for your service and for the opportunity to address the board today. My name is Kim McDonald, and I served 2 terms as a county commissioner in Bent County before retiring in January of this year. And I would like to speak today in support of the appointment of Nicole Rose Marino into the position as director of the State Land Board. I believe that Nicole is deeply qualified for this position and that she would be an effective leader for the organization as well. I first became acquainted with Nicole in 2017, my first year as a commissioner, when the Southern Plains Land Trust, where she was the director at the time, met with the commissioners regarding the purchase of land that would become part of the Heartland Preserve that's located in Bent County. I've had numerous times to engage with her since then, and all of them have been positive and informative and pleasant. Nicole has often invited the commissioners and other members of the public to come to the property in Benton County to learn about their work. I just found her to be open and informative. I know that she's made good relationships with neighboring ranchers and landowners that are adjacent to their property and in the community as well. And that's whether it's sharing fence lines or best practices. She's been helpful with her neighbors as well. She's effectively managed the lands that they own in Benton County while honoring and supporting the work of our local ag producers. Benton County is a small community, and it's rich in heritage in agriculture, which is our largest economic sector. The work that Nicole has done in the county has complemented the existing ag-based industry. I believe she's committed to good land management and practices. And my observation in regards to economic development has been that whenever possible, Southern Plains Land Trust, which is my longest term experience with her, I know she's not affiliated with that anymore in that regard, has made local purchases and hired local individuals for projects that were germane to their work here. They've contributed to our local economy. As the director of a large nonprofit, she's demonstrated a strong ability to manage assets and to use those assets to further the goals of the organization. And I believe that she will bring that same tenacity, professionalism, and commitment to the State Land Board in fulfilling its mission of managing the public trust lands that belong to all Coloradans, of increasing the value of these assets, and of utilizing those funds for the purpose of public schools and the other missions of the State Land Board. Finally, I would like to say that both of the school districts located in Benton County have been previous recipients of funds through BEST grants. And one of the two of those, the McClave School District, was awarded a grant just this last year and are in the process of working toward building a new pre-K 12 facility. And we are very grateful that the State Land Board exists to make these kind of works possible, especially in small rural communities. And I thank you for your ongoing work. I would support a yes vote, and I thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, thank you for your time.
Hey, Kim, this is Philip Chavez. Good seeing you. That's all I wanted to say.
Good seeing you too, Philip.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Certainly.
All right. The next online commenter that we will be promoting to panelists is Lauren McCain. You will be moved over to panelist and able to unmute your camera and microphone to address the board.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I see my video isn't on. Okay. There we are. So Madam Chair and members of the board, I'm really honored to be able to comment on Nicole Rose Marino's personal character. I strongly support her as being the next director of the State Land Board. I've known Nicole for over 3 decades, both personally and professionally. And Nicole is quite simply the most honest, ethical, hardworking, fair, and open-minded person that I know. I'm proud to call her a friend. Over the years, we've bonded over our love of gardening, reading, and hiking with our dogs all across the state of Colorado. I would say especially in the Eastern Plains, which we both love tremendously. Nicole grew up in a rural community. She understands the needs and interests of rural Coloradans. She's from a working class family. Her parents raised 5 daughters on her father's firefighter salary. And her parents imbued her with excellent values. She's a wise decision maker She takes all perspectives into account before making a decision. She is incredibly informed. You have seen her professional qualifications. I'm sure that you understand her great intelligence. And you can be assured that Nicole will carry out the duties of the State Land Board Director with the highest level of integrity. She will act in the interests of all Coloradans and the students of the state. She is quite simply just a wonderful person, and you won't regret a yes vote for Nicole. Thank you.
For the record, Laura, could you state your name and where you're living?
Yes, it's Laura McCain, and I'm a resident of Denver.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. If you'd like to comment on this agenda item and you are attending online, please use the Zoom function of raising your hand and we can move you over. Commissioner Frove, I'm not seeing any other hands raised for public comment on the item.
Well, and we thank the public for taking the time to either write or present their comments today. Very helpful. I'd like to take this time to ask the candidate if she has anything to say or would like to address the commission.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Rosmarino, and I'm a resident of Centennial, Colorado. Thank you, Chair Frove and Commissioners, for your consideration of me as the next director of the State Land Board. I appreciate everyone here in person and on Zoom for taking the time to participate in this public process and for the opportunity to properly introduce myself to you. I have a lifelong love of the land. What has evolved for me over time is how to channel that passion into constructive, big tent thinking, connecting with people from all walks of life, but particularly in agriculture and in conservation. My educational background and career have prepared me well for this position. I have a master's in agricultural policy and a PhD in conservation policy, practical experience stewarding large properties, a successful track record of entrepreneurial revenue generation, and a statewide perspective from my years in the governor's office. In that role, I have worked most closely with the Colorado Department of Agriculture, an agency committed to advancing agriculture across the state every single day. I have been proud to help shape and support programs at CDA that increase access for new generations of farmers and ranchers and assist producers in stewardship practices vital to the future of agriculture and ecosystem services. Having lived and worked in Southeast Colorado for many years, I have an affinity for the Eastern Slope. As Willa Cather put it, anybody can love the mountains, but it takes a soul to love the prairie. I also love the mountains and all of Colorado's diverse ecosystems, but the Eastern Slope is where 2/3 of the State Land Board's holdings are, and I have a deep familiarity with this region I would bring with me. In my leadership at the Southern Plains Land Trust, I worked very closely with my friends, neighboring livestock producers, most notably on a 50-mile wildlife-friendly fence project that helped with livestock management on both sides of the fence, as well as enabling pronghorn and other wildlife to access a larger area across the landscape. I have direct experience in managing livestock and the infrastructure necessary for livestock operations. My approach at the Land Trust has long been a harmonious one, being a good neighbor, benefiting local communities economically, all while advancing ecological restoration, biodiversity, and carbon sequestration. Leading up to today, I have met with members of the Rural Caucus of state legislators, as well as Colorado's leading agriculture organizations to listen to their priority issues and to directly communicate my perspective on the centrality of agriculture and sound stewardship to the State Land Board alongside its diverse lines of business to generate revenue for schools. I am grateful for the constructive dialogues I participated in and look forward to strong partnerships. Respectful and open engagement of individuals and groups from a variety of perspectives, in my view, is vital to me as a public servant, is crucial for good governance, and is the Colorado way. In addition to understanding the challenges rural communities face, I have a deep desire to listen, learn, and innovate together to lessen those challenges wherever and whenever possible. I bring the perspective of a former State Land Board lessee and a commitment to supporting lessee success. I embrace the importance of fair processes and practices across the agency's lines of business and strong relationships with lessees and with local communities. At the heart of the State Land Board is its excellent staff and Board of Commissioners. I am so deeply impressed by your outstanding fulfillment of the mission of generating revenue for schools while advancing land stewardship. It would be my great honor to build on this success through energy, enthusiasm, and dedication. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Nicole. Does anyone have any questions for Nicole before we?
I do, and I just feel compelled because you and I had a chance to talk about this. I'm from Summit County. I well remember the night of the Vail fire, which was pretty shocking when we knew folks who worked at the resort, etc. I was way younger. You were younger than me when all of this happened. And I think it would be helpful for our audience to clarify. Those comments have been sent to us many, many times and heard today. Your perspective, you were in graduate school, and I'm not holding necessarily youth against you. I just want to be clear, but we've had this conversation. I feel compelled on the part of my community to ask you just, and reflecting on that time and that event and your words, your perspective today.
Please.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Scanlon, for the question. I have definitely reflected on that, and it was indeed a long time ago. And I believe I've evolved quite a bit since then. I would not say anything or think anything along those lines today. I'm a firm believer in self-improvement, and I've had 26 years to self-improve. And so the way I approach challenges today is with pragmatic and inclusive thinking. And I don't think I could have had success at the governor's office the last 2.5 years without bringing that collaborative spirit and really demonstrating, not just words, but demonstrating collaboration and inclusive thinking and well-considered approaches. And for the 11 years before that I ran the Southern Plains Land Trust, as you heard from former Commissioner McDonald, I really approached that absolutely in collaboration with our neighbors. And I don't think the Land Trust could have been successful if we hadn't built those partnerships with neighboring livestock ranchers, as well as local communities. And they weren't just neighbors to us, they were friends. The people that I would see every day out in the middle of nowhere, where you learn to depend on each other because you'll be pulling each other out of a ditch once it rains on those dirt roads. So that's, I think, the most relevant pieces of my past that stretch back, 13 years on how I've really effectively evolved in my approach to all sorts of challenges, but certainly conservation and agriculture.
I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Any other statements or questions or discussion from the commission?
I mean, sure, I guess I can have like 3 minutes.
You can have more.
Thank you. I don't know, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and we've talked last week for a while, and over the last, aside from this, last week I was reading some of my great-great-great-grandfather's poetry, some of his letters he wrote to his family in Michigan. He was coming through Colorado in the 1840s to Bent's Fort to join up with the Army of the West, and then heading to Santa Fe and then San Diego. And but his letters, or what he wrote about Colorado, the rural landscapes, it was just fascinating, really. In his prayers, it was just fascinating reading something 170 years ago. And if he was alive today, I think he would be amazed, shocked at how our industry's evolved, how Colorado's evolved, how the rural communities are, I think, not even close to what they were back then. And I think that's, you know, the land board's changed since 1876. And I think that's what I appreciate about you, Nicole, Dr. Rosemarino. I like the big tent thinking that you said a second ago. We're changing. Ranching is changing. Farming is changing. I was thinking a minute ago too, our past director, did he have any ag experience? You know, I don't think so, but I think I have such great respect for Bill Ryan. And you're coming into this with, I think, a lot more knowledge than he did on the ranching, the rural communities. But it is evolving, and I think we need to go. I appreciate what you're saying. This is the bottom line, and I think, and the other thing, I think I'm kind of a little offended by kind of maybe everybody's comments today. What's the board? Are we chopped liver? I mean, I think, aren't we kind of in? You know, we're interviewing you, but I don't, you know, it's not like this board would never allow wholesale changes to this group. So, you know, again, you kind of in essence work for us, right? I think. And I just, everybody's acting like, oh my God, there's this history of whatever, which I'm not a fan of. I mean, again, things are changing and evolving. The things that we're doing with the carbon sequestration, biodiversity, these are things that we all agree with. Extremists, I don't know. I mean, maybe things long ago, but you know, the board is still the board, and I will offer my support to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shatner. Anyone else?
Is this our discussion?
This is our-
Okay, I
Yes.
wasn't sure
Yes.
if it was questions. I will say this has been challenging, I think, for everyone. I view this role as a proxy for some of the frustration the ag community has or is feeling with the governor's office. And while this is kind of a joint appointment, if we want to be transparent, we sent 3 finalists to the governor, and we share in this appointment with him. So, you know, I think there's been confusion around how this works. So he has a voice and we have a voice. And I need to echo what Philip has said. We are an ag organization. We've been committed to the future of ag. We want to see new farmers and ranchers. We put a lot of resources into that. And I've talked to you about 2 things. One, I appreciate you reaching out and meeting with all the folks who have criticized this appointment and taking the time to do that. It meant a lot to me that you were able to do that, and we work in collaboration with people. Ironically, what we wanted was not a controversial choice here. You know, we are a nonpartisan, advocacy kind of organization. We have a very clear mission, and that's to support the school children of this state. This has become something in the mix of the turmoil that is reflective of issues across our state, particularly urban-rural divides, which we as a collective group of people have worked hard, really hard to bridge, because we do good for the whole state. When we go into rural communities, our job is the message around, we're here to support the kids in your community. And we do it through these means. And we have to raise money. And we have to bring in dollars. Ag's a critical cornerstone to that. And I believe your sincerity around a commitment to that. We've had now several conversations reflecting this. I think it's unfortunate we are where we are in terms of folks feeling making this the issue it has become. I don't like that our board is caught in the middle of this in what should be really a celebration of a next leader and their vision and leadership. And I've shared with you, wherever your issues are with this current governor, he won't be the current governor, and we will still be here, and you will still be here. And it is us who will set this vision and the path forward. We know there's legislation that is looking at a working group who will be charged with looking at the land board's work. I've shared in my comments to you, I want you to be actively engaged in that to make sure that we're protecting our interests, particularly in agriculture, and not at the expense of other things necessarily, but that's a priority. So we are still here, and it is a priority for this board. And I know we have 2 commissioners rotating off, but I don't doubt the new commissioners coming on. We'll do that as well. So Philip, I'm glad you said that, because I'm like, well, we still get to have a real say in this. So I just want to conclude with, we've heard the ag community loud and clear on this choice. I wish things had not come to the head that they have in the way they have. I think it's reflective of broader issues than outside of necessarily this role. And I respect that, and I understand that. I'm not naive to that. But your job will be working with us to bridge some of those divides, and the proof will be in the walk and the talk. And that's what our next real challenge will be. And frankly, we're up for that challenge, because that's who we are.
Pardon me?
Commissioner Clark has a comment.
Okay, we'll go to Commissioner Clark then.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. And I just also want to thank my colleagues on the board. I'm sorry I'm not there in person with you, all of the staff of the land board, and all of the public commenters, both for and against this particular candidate. I don't want to say that, not this candidate as a person, but this selection, in that I think this is exactly, in a lot of ways, how our process should work, that we are an open place for folks to come, and we have very intentionally read all of the written comments that came in advance, so that we could come here together this morning in a thoughtful, collaborative, pragmatic way, to make, a sober decision that is very important for this organization. I've actually prepared a bit of a statement, which I never do. I always just start talking, but I think this is really, I just wanted to make sure that I am as clear as possible. So if you'd allow me just to share, and I think it encapsulates a lot of what my colleagues, Commissioners Chavez and Scanlon, have just noted as well, that I just want to add my voice to. Primarily, or firstly, that the State Land Board has almost 150 years of history of effective stewardship. We predate statehood of Colorado. This organization has been successfully guided through many generations of change, while always remaining true to the core mission of the organization as enshrined in the Colorado Constitution. And that purpose of this board is very clear. We are to act in the best interest of the trust beneficiaries to fund public schools and public institutions. And I appreciate that all of the public commenters have accurately noted that we have a clear legal and ethical fiduciary duty to prioritize financial returns and sound stewardship of our trust lands. And our core operational focus is on working lands. And when we talk about working lands, it's about economic productivity and land stewardship and how those go hand in hand. And we absolutely honor the primacy of agriculture in that definition of working lands. That remains a foundation of our land portfolio and our stewardship values. To the point that my colleagues have made, the State Land Board is governed by the board, by these 5 commissioners. We are also appointed by the governor, but we are confirmed by the state legislature. So the ultimate decision-making is the responsibility of the board. Relying heavily on and deeply respecting the thoughtful and tireless work of the staff of the land board under the leadership of an executive director and his or her deputies. And it is the director's role, a critical role, to translate the board, the staff, strategic direction into the day-to-day operations while ensuring alignment with those of other stakeholders. What we looked for in this director, they are explicitly charged with ensuring program implementation across, first and foremost, representing the interests of our trust beneficiaries. That absolutely includes the agricultural community, maintaining strong financial trusteeship, upholding property stewardship, achieving organizational excellence, and fostering public engagement and collaboration with lessees, local communities, and other stakeholders. The selection process itself, as my colleague Commissioner Scanlon noted, we did have a nationwide search. We are, as commissioners, very much engaged in this process. We interviewed 6 very impressive, highly qualified individuals. We put forward a slate of 3. That slate of 3 included Dr. Rose Marino, and she went on to the next round and then was ultimately selected as the sole finalist to be before you here today. The individual that I voted for in that slate of 3 to forward to the governor, Ms. Rose Marino, was because she clearly demonstrated overwhelmingly impressive, thoughtful, collaborative, and visionary leadership qualities. She clearly expressed to us an understanding of the land board's legacy, mission, and constitutional obligations. She clearly articulated a vision for the future that respects the primacy of working lands and agricultural activities, and also openings for other ways that we consider the importance and use of these lands, including what is close to my heart, affordable housing, or just how we steward lands for public needs as those show up as our societies grow and change. And critically, she has a proven ability to manage complex budgets and staff, and that is what this role requires. So we are undertaking as commissioners a responsibility to appoint a director who will advance our constitutional mission, support and guide our staff, and strengthen relationships with beneficiaries, lessees, and communities. And I do believe that we have identified such a leader in Dr. Rose Marino. I remain confident in the integrity of this overall process and in the capability of this candidate who has been selected to lead us in that direction. But to end, just also noting that just as folks have been able to come here today to express concerns, our meetings are always public. Everyone will have the ability to come before this board to see her in action, to see the board in action. And if there are additional concerns, feel free to raise them substantively based on what we will see in front of us today, rather than more of these kind of ad hominem attacks from statements made previously. This job requires balancing a lot of different obligations and constituencies. And I feel confident that we have someone in front of us who is able to do that. But if that would not be the case, it will be open and in front of everyone to see. That's what I wanted to state for the record today. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark.
So, Madam Chair, when I was first appointed to the board, I went back and read kind of the history. I used to be an American history teacher, and I was intrigued about how did it come about that sections of land were made available to the states as they came into the Union. And I recall reading that one of the principal intents was, they said that democracies and new areas that are going to be a part of this great country cannot function without education. And those set aside sections were specifically for education. And so then as I read back about what we in Colorado and the Land Board did from its very beginning, which of course started with the Constitution, I saw that we went where the resources were. We were very involved in mining and extraction as ways to fund education. And then things have transpired, and obviously oil and gas has become the single largest revenue source for this board. Also not something that everybody agrees with. But the one thing people all agree with is that we have a mission that is inclusive of agriculture and always will be. And it has really been transformative for me as I have served on this board for these years with people whom I actually did not know, but who I have seen come absolutely as I have to love the absolute commitment that we have to the land in every form. I would be less than honest if I didn't say that when I read the remarks, which are attributed accurately to Dr. Rosmarino, I was very offended. I still find those very unacceptable. But I've spoken to her about this. I have heard from people who support her work, and I greatly admire the kinds of attributes that they give to her. Collaboration, openness, a desire to listen to all points of view, a desire to be innovative and entrepreneurial in pursuit of what I believe are the transformative parts of our world as we look at the kinds of way we can sustain life and have soil that is productive, have lands that are productive, and frankly, yes, relationships that are productive. It's not healthy for us to say the kinds of things that I have read in the comments. And I believe Dr. Rosmarino will do her best to try to make things work in a peaceful, authentic, and open way. And therefore, in the words of Mr. Russell, who said we must be fully accountable to the mission of the State Land Board, it is with great pleasure that I would like to offer a motion in support of the confirmation of Dr. Nicole Rosmarino. I might say a historic appointment.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Heath. And in that vein, I would like to see who might offer a second to that motion.
Second.
And as we've had the public comment prior to this, we will not be seeking any other prior public comment on this decision. And I would like to say two things to close. One is I want to thank in complete earnest my fellow commissioners, all of you, for stating all of the things that I had in mind for my statement. And truly with the genuine conviction, support, and acknowledgement of the Land Board's mission. You all have said it so eloquently. So I'm going to honor our own advice, which was not to repeat. And I would like to call a vote on the motion in front of us. Commissioner Clark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you
Congratulations.
very much. Congratulations. How about a quick? Thank you.
Bill was lead.
All right, a 5-minute recess. Restart at 9:30.
Now you'll just close the mics, close the camera, pause the recordings. Commissioner Clark, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I will be dropping off now. Thank you all so much.
Oh,
It's pretty fascinating. You're good to go, Commissioner?
okay. I'd like to reconvene the public meeting for the Colorado State Land Board. June. All right.
Commissioner, if you'll just update the attendance, please, for the departure of Commissioner
Thank you for
Clark.
reminding me. Let's take a quick roll call. Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Clark has been excused from the rest of this meeting. Commissioner Chavez?
Here.
Commissioner Heath? Here. Commissioner Scanlon? Here. I'm here, obviously, so we got 4 commissioners. All right, so let's proceed with our business under our amended agenda. And hopefully someone will keep track of where we are and where we're going, but we'd like to welcome Ben Teschner to discuss the next action items on our agenda for today.
Thank you, commissioners, and for clarity, this agenda item was a final action item and was moved to an information item.
Yes.
Some of the commissioners may be and public may be relieved to also see that we have shortened this to 15 minutes as well. So good morning, commissioners. My name is Ben Teschner. I am your solid minerals manager. I am also in charge of our geothermal leasing program. I'm here today to provide an update on geothermal lease 113192 issued to Mount Princeton Geothermal LLC. Needless to say, this is not the presentation I was expecting to give even 24 hours ago. Staff are no longer asking the board to take any action related to this geothermal lease 113192, which will expire in accordance with its terms on July 1, 2025. Our lessee, Mount Princeton Geothermal, had developed business partnerships with 2 other companies, Western Geothermal and Reykjavik Geothermal. These companies brought financial resources to the project and technical expertise to explore for and develop geothermal power facilities. Yesterday, on June 11th, staff received notice that Western Geothermal and Reykjavik Geothermal had terminated their business relationships with our lessee, and these companies will no longer be involved in the project. Staff believe that conducting geothermal exploration work, drilling science wells, and pursuing development of the geothermal resources on this parcel is in the best interest of the trust. Without these business partners, staff believe that Mount Princeton Geothermal is unlikely to be successful in advancing the project in a timely manner. On May 7th, a little over a month ago, staff received a geothermal lease application from a separate entity, Princeton Holdings LLC, for the same property. Princeton Holdings is the company that owns the Mount Princeton Hot Springs Resort. After meeting with Ms. Karen Pate, who shepherded the application to staff understand that the goal of the Princeton Holdings application is to stop geothermal development on the lease area. Staff denied Princeton Holdings application. On June 10th, 3 days ago, Princeton Holdings filed a formal request for review of staff's decision of denial to the board. Some attendees of the meeting today were expecting that this request for review would be discussed as part of the geothermal exploration lease extension decision item. Given inaction with respect to the extension of lease 113192, staff had placed the Princeton Holdings request for review on a future board meeting to give Princeton Holdings and staff appropriate time to prepare information for the board and to give the board time to review those materials. In conclusion, Yesterday, June 11th, staff sent a formal letter to Mount Princeton Geothermal, our lessee, notifying them that staff is no longer recommending that the board extend their lease 113192. Within this letter, staff have informed Mount Princeton Geothermal that they have the right to ask for a request for review of this staff decision within 30 days of receipt of the letter. If Mount Princeton Geothermal chooses to exercise that right, their request for review will be placed on the agenda of a future board meeting. This concludes my presentation, and I am happy to take any questions from the board at this time.
Fellow commissioners, any?
Whoa.
Yeah. Well, I would like to say that, one, I'd like to commend you for your adaptability and elasticity in preparing, with all these changes, preparing the recommended course of action. And I support that. I think more time for review of these matters, in the future and circumstances is a good idea, and we'll see what comes forward. And I'd also like to thank you for the time and energy you went into preparing the additional materials for us on sort of geothermal exploration, the wells, the development in general. We've all learned from that process, and we'll be, that much more better prepared to review these matters when they come forward. So thank you very much for the additional information, effort, and content for us. Really,
thanks for going to the community. You've gone to the community. You've really met with some folks too. So, yeah, it's much appreciated.
Yes.
I think to follow up with there's other exploration lease or drilling going on just to keep abreast of it and see how that. I mean, they're talking 20,000 feet. I'm curious how those play out over time.
For clarity, that is not on state land board property,
Right.
but it is in Weld County, and certainly something that staff is watching.
We expect this will be an expanding, opportunity for us under your portfolio management. So may I, this is an information item, so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, and we'll look forward to hearing more. Thank you very much. So now we will circle back to public comment period for non-agenda items. Is there anyone, you want to do your thing?
Sure. Yeah, anybody in the meeting room right now that would like to make a public comment on a non-agenda item, please feel free to raise your hand in the meeting room here. If you are an online attendee and would like to make a comment on a non-agenda item, please use the Zoom raise hand function. We can move you over. Looks like I have one hand raised already, Commissioner.
Okay.
Karen Pate.
There's also somebody in the room.
Oh, is there somebody in the room?
Somebody in the room.
Let's start with you, sir.
Yes, sure.
Good morning. My name is John Hank Held, H-E-L-D. I'm the principal of Mount Princeton Geothermal. And I live at 11410 County Road 240 in Salida, Colorado. Mount Princeton Geothermal is my project, and we've been working on it for 15 years. I put about $2.5 million of my own money into this to bring it up to date. We are the current holders of the geothermal exploration lease. In going forward, we realized that we needed to bring in some additional party with additional expertise and financial resources that we did not have. And we attempted to put together a joint venture. We worked together with, as was reported earlier, with Western Geothermal and with Reykjavik Geothermal. And I have to apologize at this point in time, both to the board and to the staff for having put this together. It took a lot of effort, but in the end, as far as this joint venture is concerned, we have irreconcilable differences. And at this point in time, we have disassociated ourselves with the former party. We will be reapplying with new partners. Hopefully that will be able to continue going forward. This all looked very good on paper when we put this together, but as they say, the devil's in the details. And as it was, it just simply didn't work out. I'm glad, frankly, that we caught it now instead of in the future, which it could have been much more complicated. So we will be making a fresh start and be back with you shortly. That's all I have to say. Any questions?
No, thank you for taking the time and effort to come and address us on the subject.
Even got a haircut for that.
All right, we have one hand raised online.
Right.
Ms. Pate, you are being promoted to panelist. Please unmute your mic and your camera, and you'll be able to address the board.
Hello.
Morning.
Hello. Great, thank you. Good morning. Wow. I cannot thank you enough. I had some comments prepared, not about the non-agenda item. But generally they were around process, label those. Instead, I want to thank staff who has been extremely helpful in responding to questions, helping to make sure links become available for us, navigating the process, the last minute, excuse me, changes. Were challenging for us, but I'm glad that we were able to call off our Save Our Arkansas Valley supporters to make good use of everyone's time. I also appreciate, I'm not sure how to, former interim director Massey's outreach late yesterday. That was extremely prudent. So we had people planning to travel to Denver. So thank you. So the two things I do want to make a note of is that the new package actually was not on the website this morning. The link that I received went to a different location. So if people didn't have the subscription for email, they probably might not have seen it. I also do want to call to your attention, in your packet, you list recent news articles, and unfortunately this didn't bubble up, but it is in the attachment. There's a recent Chaffee County Commissioner's resolution supporting keeping our public lands intact. And I think that going forward, this is definitely a basis for a great partnership where with the other proposal that we hope will be able to become agenda items soon, we'll be able to put some money on the table so that we can help you support K through 12, while also providing for stewardship and that important role in your charter, which often is in conflict. So we have been working very hard to try to find an amenable solution to this situation. And I really hope that we have a good beat on this. And I appreciate everyone continuing to work with us, Save Our Arkansas Valley, and myself. I didn't introduce myself. I'm really sorry. And I just want to say thank you. I'm so ecstatic, and I can't wait to give this news to our supporters. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and I think we did record for the record. This is Karen Pate with Save Our Arkansas Valley, correct? Okay. Good. Anyone else?
Any other commenters online who would like to make a public comment? Please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Not seeing any hands raised, Commissioner.
Okay, great. Thank you. I guess former interim director. Did you want to make announcements now or save them for the end, or?
I'm happy to just make one quick announcement or two. Looks like we have a new director. Based on transition time and logistics in the background, happy to be serving as your official interim through the end of the week. So any business matters will have continuity for signing authority and whatever we need, of course. And just put out there for your commissioners' awareness, we've held aside sometime on the afternoon of June 24th, that's a Tuesday, to do an orientation with the two gentlemen that have been appointed as our new commissioners for this body. And details to come for them on that. But we expect to spend a couple hours together going through all sorts of things from the top, mission, vision, and strategic plan down through how the businesses have been running recently and board governance and staff relationships and all that good stuff. So we'll have a couple of commissioners joining us officially July 1st. Looking forward to having their participation in July's board activity and more to come. And Director Rose Marino will be has been invited as well and plans to attend, as I understand.
Yes.
So
Thank you, Nick, and we'll say some more at the end, but again, cannot really articulate the appreciation that I know my fellow commissioners and I have for your able handling of the last several months. They have not been easy, and you have always been there, a steady hand, and really guided us through that sort of transition time. And we really appreciate it.
thanks, appreciate that. And I'll be updating my LinkedIn.
Thank you.
But feel free to continue on with the agenda.
No, I just want to add to that. I concur with those comments. And I also want to say that the most recent public comment that commended you on your late afternoon outreach to make sure people wouldn't have to make this trip in shows, I think, everyone your level of dedication. And I really want to thank you for that in this instance, but also through this time of transition. You've really been a rock solid part of this organization.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, then I see Aaron Ray in the audience. Can we move to the Department of Natural Resources report? Well,
Thank you, Chair Pro. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Aaron Ray, and I serve as Assistant Director for Energy Innovation in the Executive Director's Office at the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. I'm pleased to be here today to provide the Executive Director's report to the board. First, on behalf of DNR Executive Director Dan Gibbs, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Rose Marino for her appointment as State Land Board Director and welcome Nicole to the DNR team. Dan wishes he could be here in person, but unfortunately had another long scheduled obligation today. We look forward to working closely with Nicole, the commissioners, and State Land Board staff to support your unique mission to steward our trust lands while providing needed funding for Colorado schools. Moving to personnel news in the Executive Director's Office, Deputy Policy Director Kelly Romero-Heaney has accepted a job with the City of Steamboat Springs and will be transitioning out of DNR at the end of the month. We are very disappointed to lose Kelly. She's been a tremendous resource for the department, for the governor's office. She served as our assistant director for water, and she will be greatly missed. The executive director's office will be working to fill that position shortly. Moving to legislative updates, bill signing season has concluded, and the governor has either signed, vetoed, or allowed bills to otherwise go into effect automatically. This past year, DNR was successful in passing almost all of our priority bills with strong bipartisan support. Those bills ranged from abandoned mine reclamation, water supply planning, carbon sequestration and geothermal development, and tribal access to state parks and wildlife trafficking. We are now internally planning for the 2026 legislative session. Feels like we just finished 2025, but that is how things work. Legislative proposals are due to the governor's office by August 1st of this year. Outside of DNR legislation, as was mentioned at our last meeting, House Bill 25-1332 requires DNR to convene a state trust lands conservation and recreation work group to study opportunities to advance conservation, climate resilience, biodiversity, and sustainable, equitable, and low conflict recreation on state trust lands in accordance with Colorado's outdoor strategy. Kelly Romero-Heaney, DNR's policy director, will be with you later today to provide an update on the implementation of that bill. I'll also note we are tracking legislative committees during this interim, including the Water Resources and Agriculture Review Committee, which is set to have its first meeting June 30th, and the Wildfire Matters Review Committee, which is having its first meeting today. The Water Resources and Ag Committee is one that often touches on state land board related issues, either directly or indirectly, and we will keep you apprised of any relevant topics that come up in that committee this summer. Moving to budget, as folks are aware, we're finishing up fiscal year 24-25 this month, and we've received our fiscal year 25-26 appropriation, which we talked about at the last meeting. We're now planning for the FY 26-27 budget request process, and as with legislative items, budget requests are due to the governor's office August 1st. Moving to federal updates, DNR is closely tracking the federal reconciliation process, which I know many folks are paying attention to, and HR 1 as it moves through the Senate. We're grateful that several concerning provisions were removed from the latest version of that bill. Those include a proposal to roll back federal resource management plans that have been recently finalized here in Colorado. Those resource management plans took years to complete and enjoyed strong state and stakeholder support. And so we're glad that those were removed from that bill. Also removed was a proposal to sell off federal public lands. That provision was removed in the House, but is still in play in the Senate. Separately, DNR submitted a letter, which we'd be happy to share with anyone who is interested, regarding the Trump administration's proposed changes to the definition of harm under the Endangered Species Act, which has garnered significant attention. In that letter, DNR emphasized the need to uphold habitat protections for wildlife populations with ranges that extend across multiple states. Moving to energy, the Colorado Energy Office is leading development of the Renewable Siting Study and Code Repository that was called for by Senate Bill 24-212. We anticipate that a draft of that study will be available for public comment later this month or early July. Final study is due to General Assembly by September 30th of 2025. Just yesterday, the Energy and Carbon Management Commission released straw dog rules to initiate some necessary alignment of existing rules with statutory requirements. That rulemaking is likely to take place later this summer and include requirements related to worker certification, enforcement, and the adoption of CDPHE's EnviroScreen 2.0 for the purposes of energy regulation under the CMC's authority. So for folks that are interested, opportunity to participate in that rulemaking this summer. Finally, in the energy front, Senate Bill 23-186 directed ECMC to identify best management practices for capturing methane seepage in the Raton Basin and evaluate the quality of water resulting from coalbed methane production. ECMC has been hard at work on that study, and the final report will be published on ECMC's website and submitted to the General Assembly later this month. Moving to forestry, the Colorado Strategic Wildfire Action Program, or COSWAP, is supporting 2 workforce development projects on state land board land this summer, Los Pinos and the Twin Sisters Phase 2 projects. Those projects aim to reduce wildfire risk on 42 acres through hand thinning techniques performed by the Southwest Conservation Corps and the Larimer County Conservation Corps. Separately, COSWAP's Landscape Resilience Investment Program is also supporting a 3-year, $1 million grant to reduce wildfire risk to Michigan Ditch in State Forest State Park. And COSWAP is planning a project tour for that project in August of 2025. So I'd be happy to share that information with you all. On the waterfront, as you're likely aware, it's been about 3.5 years since Nebraska announced its intent to build the Perkins County Canal per a provision in the South Platte Compact that allows Nebraska to divert up to 500 CFS from the South Platte during non-irrigation season. Nebraska has thus far made little progress in moving that project forward, although we are aware that they sent offer letters to property owners in Sedgwick County this spring, and those letters included threats of condemnation. It's our understanding that Nebraska is planning to kick off a NEPA permitting process later this year that will include a full EIS and 404 permit. Regardless of those actions, there remains a long, costly, and uncertain process for Nebraska to acquire land, design, permit, and construct the Perkins County Canal. And the state of Colorado will take whatever steps are necessary to defend Colorado water users, including the state land board, and ensure that Nebraska complies with the compact and all applicable laws. I know this is an issue of some interest, and so if you want to discuss this topic in more detail, I'll be happy to connect you with DNR's Assistant Director of Water, Nate Pearson, who's been following this closely. Moving to Parks and Wildlife, Colorado Parks and Wildlife is meeting in conjunction with Great Outdoors Colorado Board of Directors this week in Glenwood Springs, and that's what leads me in front of you rather than your normal liaison, Tim Brass. During this meeting, GOCO and CPW will be discussing implementation of the Colorado Outdoor Strategy, including a deployment of $50 million of investment from GOCO to support the Colorado Outdoor Strategy, which we are excited about. In May, CPW announced a lethal removal of the first gray wolf in the state, which I'm sure folks are aware of. This removal was prompted by a series of depredations that met CPW's definition of chronic depredation. Following this action, CPW reiterated its commitment to minimizing impacts on wildlife producers as it works to uphold the voter mandate to restore sustainable population of wolves in the state. And last, moving to tribal affairs, on June 4th, DNR held its second quarterly meeting of the year with the Southern Ute Indian Tribe in Ignacio. The focus of this quarterly meeting was on water, forest health, and wildfire mitigation. This is the second year that DNR and the Southern Ute leadership have been coming together for these quarterly meetings to discuss priority issues. And we have found those incredibly valuable, and we appreciate the tribe's willingness to meet with us on a quarterly basis. On June 5th, the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs held its second quarterly meeting of the year in Toyoak. DNR provided a presentation on House Bill 25-1332, which we've talked about, and officially invited the Southern Ute and Mountain Ute tribes to each appoint a tribal representative to that work group. And as I noted, you're going to hear more about that bill's implementation later today. With that, thank you for the opportunity to join you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or follow up with any additional information you might want.
I think I read the other day that a tribal member is going to run CWCB.
Yes, we had a new appointment to CBC board, which we are excited about. And I can share more information about that appointment if the board would like.
Sure. Thank you. So I have several questions. Do you have a deadline? Do you know if there's a deadline for the committee appointments for the working committee?
For House Bill 25-1332.
Right.
I'm going to defer those questions to Kelly, who will be with you later today, and we'll have lots more information about that.
Perfect. Okay, thanks. And then the second was, you mentioned a second item in HB1 about that they had actually not removed some of the descriptions. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, there were a number of things that were included in that reconciliation bill that were of concern to DNR and Colorado. I mentioned two. One was there was a proposal to roll back federal what are called resource management plans, or RMPs. Those are plans that are adopted by the BLM, govern how BLM manages federal land. The bill would have rescinded those plans. That provision was removed from the bill, so those plans will remain in place, assuming no further action on that throughout those negotiations. And those are plans that the state has largely supported and participated in the development of, so we were glad to see that removed. The second was there was a proposal that would have disposed of federal land across the country, and that proposal was also removed, although my understanding is that as those negotiations have moved to the Senate, that remains a live issue.
So you're saying it was removed in the House, but it's still up for conversation in the Senate about disposal of federal land?
Correct.
What's your team's view of that? Are you supportive? Would you love to get an extra 1 million acres to manage? Or 2 or 10?
I will defer to our federal affairs team on that. We think public lands are incredibly valuable. You all are involved in the management of those lands in Colorado. We think the federal government has a key role to play in managing those lands here in the state. And we value our relationship with those federal state land managers here in Colorado.
We can easily manage them ourselves, or with expanded staff and so forth. More money for the schools.
I think that would be it's a really challenging conversation to have. Clearly there would be impacts to the state, and that's something that we want to better understand.
But you're keeping your eyes open.
You certainly are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming and presenting.
Thank you.
Yes.
Happy to be here.
Righty, another business, there are no requests for review, so we'll move to the final action on the agenda items noted. Ms. Miranda for Tier 1 disturbance, please.
Commissioners and those listening along online, we're sensitive to our computers still running a little bit funky. Yes. So please allow us a few minutes transition sometimes between presentations. And we know that the video feed online is still misbehaving a little bit. And while we know you would love to see our speakers' faces while they present, turns out that camera failed sometime between 6:30 this morning and about an hour ago. So
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Crystal Ferranda, Minerals Director. I'm here today to discuss a disturbance through a Tier 1 designation on lease 106456, which is also known as the Lowry lease here internally. And I do have members of Crestone Peak Resources here if there are any questions at the end. So the purpose why we're here today is we are trying to get approval of a road and a pipeline through an area that's currently designated as no surface occupancy, but there is a provision that allows this in the lease. And staff believes that the reason this was originally designated no surface occupancy has changed, and therefore approval for the road should be granted. The board is very familiar with the Lowry lease, but this is just a map of its location in the state. It is in Arapahoe County and covers roughly 21,000 acres. Some background on the lease: it was issued in 2012. It's currently held by Crestone Peak Resources, and at the time, it was the largest lease that the land board had ever issued, and it still is the largest lease. And so the board at the time wanted to make a comprehensive management plan to control where development would occur and to try and avoid sensitive areas. So the board worked with TNC, the Nature Conservancy, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Arapahoe County, and the Colorado Natural Heritage Program to create a tier map. And what the tier map does is it ranks all of the land on the Lowry Ranch from 1 through 4, which 1 being no surface occupancy and the most protective, down to tier 4, which is preferred surface occupancy. And here's a map, and I'm going to walk you through this. It's a little confusing, but let's see. You can see my mouse. This dark brown area, this is a close-up of what we are talking about today on the Lowry Ranch. But I've lost my mouse, but the dark brown area on the left side of the screen for me is the Aurora Reservoir. You will see a tan buffer around the Aurora Reservoir, and that is a 1,000-foot buffer. The red line, this is really the worst mouse. The red line that goes up and down, that is the road that is being proposed today. So originally when Civitas, sorry if I say Civitas, Crestone Peak is actually who the lease's name is held under, but they are a subsidiary of Civitas. So it's one and the same. But Crestone Peak Resources originally contacted us about expanding an existing 2-track road. So this black dash line that you can see right here, this is an existing road that runs along the east side of the Aurora Reservoir. And they wanted to expand this road and add the pipeline. They were contacted by CDPHE and Aurora Water, and they both stated they would prefer the road to be outside of the 1,000-foot buffer, as that is more protective. And so Crestone came to us with the proposal for this new road, the red, which would be outside of that 1,000-foot buffer. So staff internally asked if anyone here at the land board had any objections to the road being placed there, and they did not. But when we looked against the tier map, you will see this area in blue. This is a tier 1 no surface occupancy designation due to a proposed East Aurora Reservoir. So I will go more into that in a minute, but what does tier 1 mean? Specifically in the lease, it says there will be no permanent oil and gas operations or facilities conducted on tier 1 lands, and the location of tier 1 land shall not change over the life of the lease without board approval. So what type of lands qualify as tier 1? We went in to see why this was specifically. So there's lands within 3/10 of a mile on either side of Box Elder or Coal Creek. The surface footprint of the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs being used for helicopter operations. The footprint of the Titan Missile Complex is tier 1. Any adjudicated Rangeview reservoir sites. And at the time, the 2 proposed reservoir sites, one being proposed by Rangeview and one proposed by the city of Aurora, called the East Aurora Reservoir Site. And that is the one we're going to specifically talk about. So this is a close-up of the language from the lease regarding these 2 proposed reservoirs. I've highlighted here specifically that they wanted to designate tier 1, this proposed East Aurora Reservoir. And then at the bottom of this paragraph, I've highlighted the language that says, the lessee may negotiate with the board potential surface occupancy of the proposed reservoir sites in the future. I think this language was specifically added to this, knowing that things may change and that they may want to use this surface in the future. So what is going on with the proposed East Aurora Reservoir site? In 2007, the Water Division 1 determined that it could not be built. And in 2009, the Colorado Supreme Court affirmed that. In 2018, Aurora officially abandoned plans for this reservoir. And in 2020, the land board in our asset management plan, it states how we notified Aurora that the land would be used for other uses. So this is a map. If you were to remove the East Aurora Reservoir, the proposed East Aurora Reservoir, you can see that the road would no longer be running through a tier 1 designation. But since that East Aurora Reservoir still exists on our map, and since the lease does allow for board approval to put the road at this location, staff is requesting that the board approve the road and pipeline that goes through the tier 1 designation. And we've provided a map that will be attached to the board order, which basically shows where we would like the roads to be placed.
And I think you're recommending that due to continued uncertainty of water infrastructure, specifically at Lowry, that we not go in and change mapping and tiers at this point, right? And that treat this as a change, one of the many changes that might have been contemplated by that language.
That is correct. There's current litigation that is in settlement negotiations right now. And once those are complete and we have information on what has changed reservoir-wise out there, we're going to go come back and then present a tier map for you with all of those changes.
I think that makes sense.
Is there any economic benefit for us on this road?
Yeah, so Civitas or Crestone will have to obtain a surface use agreement, and it does charge, I believe, per rod for disturbance. So it would be added to the payment. Yeah.
It does seem from a stewardship and environmental perspective that the decision that we're going to facilitate of not improving the existing dirt road, but moving it to the end of the buffer is overall a better decision.
And I forgot to mention that they will be reclaiming the 2-track that runs within the 1,000-foot buffer as well. So.
And again, the new road will be what kind of road?
I will call Crestone Peak Resources up here to.
Thank you for the question. It'll be crushed gravel.
Just 2-lane crushed gravel.
Do you mind stating your name for the record?
Ian Harrington, representing Crestonian Citizens.
Thank you. Any other questions? May I have a motion?
This is Commissioner Chavez, I move we
After the motion. Right?
Yep.
After the motion.
we approve the tier one disturbance on lease 106456 as described in the board package.
Thank you, Commissioner Chavez. I have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Scanlon. Now, is there any public comment?
We do have one hand up right now, but I will remind everybody listening in online, if you'd like to address the board with a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Haley Young, I'm moving you over to as a panelist, and you will be able to unmute yourself and address the board with your comment.
Hello, my name is Haley Young. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And thank you for that presentation, Crystal. That was helpful and good to know. And I definitely I would say I'm supportive of this decision as far as moving this further away from the Aurora Reservoir. So I am an engineer, surveyor, and PhD student. I've had some conversations with Elliot as far as research. And so I am commenting mainly today as more of a general study of this disturbance in general. I think that the change in this case is positive. However, one thing that I think is really important to consider, not just from a fiduciary perspective, but also as far as a resources and long-term perspective for the State Land Board, would be recognizing that water from oil and gas is taking that water out of the water cycle forever. And so I think it's a really important thing to consider as far as this type of development and using all this water for fracking is recognizing, and I know our permitting for water in Colorado doesn't yet recognize that that water is mostly remains trapped in the shale, but then that produced water is obviously hydraulically injected and trucked. It's going to be trucked to Weld County. So, I mean, there's just a lot of transportation of the water and a lot of concerns that I have in the water. But then also, I do have a plan to eventually submit a proposal to the State Land Board, and I can follow up with a question on, how best it would be to proceed with that proposal. But I'm really interested in helping with like a citizen science study to help achieve the State Land Board agenda of, providing for our schools and our future. So I thank you all for your stewardship of the land and protecting these lands for the sake of the public. And I wanted to exactly establish a relationship and a comment specifically in regard to this development. So thank you.
Thank you.
So is the purpose of moving this road for increased truck traffic?
It's to access a new pad that's being built to the south.
And will that increase truck traffic?
I will let Dan speak to that.
Thank you for that question. So, we are installing, both oil and gas and water pipelines along this road. And that will eliminate tanked traffic during the so that's a pretty big reduction in. There will be traffic on the road, but the
operational phases, particularly for completion, that's a short period of time, and then for maintenance activities. Whether the road is on the ridge line or east, it's the same amount of traffic. So.
Other questions? Okay, so shall we have a vote on the motion that's before us? May I have a motion? Oh, okay.
Yep, motion.
May I have a vote? All right, Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Scanlon.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Motion carries 4-0 and.
All right, I need some clarification from Ed. So I chaired the board and I inherited the rules of chairing from Gary Butterworth, who was a stickler. So we always heard, we had the presentation, and then we opened it up to commissioner or discussion, public comment, board discussion, and then asked for a motion. We didn't do a motion before public comment, and I'm just confused why we're doing that now.
So,
And I checked my notes, I'm just saying, I checked my Gary Butterworth notes to make sure I was remembering correctly.
It's really a matter of convenience and preference for the board in its order of decision making. Robert's rules doesn't really address exactly when. It has been a practice of at least some recency to have the motion and then public discussion for the board members. So that's not today, but it has been long. But
we just did that.
We just did it. I realize that in today's discussions we've had it both ways.
Right.
But
Well, that's because I intervened on the first one. Just own that. Well, here's my concern. I may not want to make a motion, given the public comment that we as an input. Just to be honest about that, because I've had my thinking changed once you get, and I think we all have, once you hear the public comment. But a motion assumes approval from at least 2 of the commissioners.
Or that we're pursuing.
Yeah,
It's
that we're
like an
pursuing.
intent.
Well, you don't make a motion unless you support it.
Right.
So that's where I'm having some hesitation. I'd rather hear from the public, have some commissioner discussion, and then ask for a motion once we get all that feedback.
Yeah, and I'm delighted to hear it's not a requirement to have the motion on the floor.
Well, the
Public
Gary
discussion.
Butterworth rules of order.
So we have the flexibility to do it either way. That's great.
And a couple things. So keep in mind that as a small board and as 5 board members, you are even smaller than what Roberts thinks of as a small decision-making body. You have a great deal of flexibility. We've talked about this before. The most critical element is that the board is clear about what it is doing and why, and that staff understands that so that it can implement board orders. So that's really the most critical element in the decision making. If you'd like to hear public comment before making a motion, that's perfectly acceptable. I will note that because you are a small board, the normal concept of moving and seconding don't have the same implication of voting in favor as it might in a larger body and is in a legislative body. So in the past, motions have been made simply to move a concept to a vote without the person making the motion or seconding the motion being obligated to vote in favor of that motion.
But then do you withdraw a motion if you decide
Then it
that
gets
you
messy.
don't want, it gets really messy that you don't want to support it any longer? I mean, to be honest, if I really decided I didn't like it, what I heard, I'd withdraw my motion even for a vote.
Well, I concur. I think it's much cleaner that we listen to the
Yeah,
public.
yeah, I agree.
first
Good. Well, I'm glad. I was thinking that I had not been following the right rules.
No, well,
but
that's
clearly.
write down Gary Butterworth's name.
Gary Butterworth, thank you very much.
Well,
And
he-
let's,
he
maybe
was
we all
quite a
agree
rule
that we're
follower.
going to do what we used to do, which is have lots of conversation and then somebody will make. a
Yeah,
motion.
I because I think our minds have been changed by public comment.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah,
On occasion.
on occasions, it's true.
Or we need more information before we can move something forward. And I think withdrawing motions is messy.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. Yes, no,
Just-
that makes sense to me.
Just out of personal curiosity, what would be the difference between withdrawing a motion or a no vote?
Well, I think for me, and I did come from the legislature where you did not put a motion, you didn't move anything unless you were going to vote yes. For me, it's an implication of support, and I think that I would rather hear everything before I do that. And we've had times where there is no motion. Where people are not okay with what's gone on. And we've had to intervene in terms of sending something back or what have you. So it just feels premature to do a motion before we get the input.
And again, your preference worked out, and that's fine. I would note, we've had situations where there's been no motion. We've also had situations where a commissioner has made a motion specifically not indicating that they necessarily support the motion, but that they want to.
Well, not me or Gary Butterworth's motions. I'm just letting you know. But anyways, I'll let it go.
So
Over a breakfast burrito, I might take issue with that, but it's my
I think we're all, yes, I think that's a delightful way to do it. So now where we are
It's our next agenda.
is, we did just have the vote. So yes.
Yes,
okay,
we're all
we
good
are-
to go. We're good to go.
And actually, we're not at our next agenda. item.
And thanks for indulging the conversation because.
Yes, we actually are. Okay. Yes, Mr. Teschner.
Ben, hold on just a second. Can, on the three dots on the right where it says more, you can tell it to hide floating meeting controls. One more.
Excellent. Let the succeeding discussion be evidence of the board's commitment to the public process. Always fun to see. For the record, this is Ben Teschner returning again, this time to bring to you two separate items, which will occur in succession. These two items are both sand and gravel leases. They are both with the same applicant. They are both in a similar region of the state. And therefore there is a lot of duplication in these two items. So if we get to the second one and you feel like you've seen this before, that's because you have. So we'll begin with the first one, which is Solid Minerals Lease 117352 in Rio Grande County. I will note also for the record that Jody Schreiber, who is representing the applicant in both of these leases, is online and available to take questions if there are any from the board. The picture on your screen is a view of the property in question, viewed from the county. I believe it's actually a state highway looking north. Let's see if I have control here. Sure.
Give it a click and then the keyboard will respond.
There we go. This lease is an opportunity for the board to produce gravel from an area that is already producing gravel. And it's an additional gravel lease would fit well within sort of the neighborhood that we have here. The photo on your screen is looking south. So we're looking towards where the previous photo was taken. And this is a county lease held by Rio Grande County on the parcel immediately north of the one that we are considering today. Maybe. Oh, there we go. This lease is located in western Rio Grande County, very close to the town of South Fork, and it is on 80 acres of property. If we zoom in, We can see the state highway I was referring to that runs sort of east-west through the middle of the property. We have a sort of a funny configuration of state trust lands here that spans both the north and south sides of the highway. And if we zoom in on this area, the lease area here shown in yellow, if we zoom in on this area, I'd like to point out a couple other activities. Again, the lease area here shown in yellow, the highway running along the bottom edge of the map. And on the left side, I'm not going to attempt to use this mouse. On the left side, you can see there's a county road that comes in from the west and connects in with the Rio Grande County mine that is located to the north of the parcel in question. And that would almost certainly be the access to the parcel for this mining lessee as well. And there's also a private mine located just to the north and east of the parcel as well. The mine we're considering today would be similar in scale to the private mine that you see in the upper right. The lessee on this property would be Rocky Mountain Rock, which is a company held by John and Jim Wilshaw. The Wilshaw family is a family from Mont Vista, and they also operate a company called SLV Earth Movers. And the Rocky Mountain Rock company is a vertical integration of their construction business. So this is a company and family that has experience in all kinds of heavy construction, including mine reclamation, which I think is a really nice feature for us as the State Land Board, and knowing that eventually a project will get to this point. As part of our standard process of considering solid minerals leases, staff reach out to a number of parties, including the county planning and land use office, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and our internal stewardship staff as well. Rio Grande County expressed that they have no concerns with us issuing the lease, and they are prepared to receive a application for conditional use from the Wilshaw family and Rocky Mountain Rock whenever they are prepared for that. In consultation with Parks and Wildlife and internal stewardship staff, this is an area that is mapped as a possible area for Gunnison's prairie dogs. And so we will require that a qualified person do a prairie dog survey prior to initial disturbance. This is also an area that is big game winter range. And an effective way of managing that is limiting the initial disturbance on the property to be outside of that winter ranging time so that we're not disturbing wintering big game. Yes.
So initial disturbance, that's just digging it out, but after that's done, it'll operate year round.
Right. And the idea is that if there are wintering animals that are coming through, that they will be aware of the disturbance when it is happening, right? And so they can adapt accordingly. But if we're moving in during a wintering time when the animals are there, then we are pushing them out of an area where they have decided to be for that time. And again, this is, there's mines already in this neighborhood, so I believe some of this is sort of already occurring, but nevertheless, I think it's good practice and appropriate for our lease. There are no cultural resources surveys that have been conducted on this property to date, but has been our recent practice. We will require that the lessee conduct a Class 3 cultural resources survey on the property for the areas they plan to disturb. And a Class 3 survey is where somebody with archaeological training comes out and actually walks the property, looking for those types of resources. This is a property that has had previous exploration work on it by the Wilshaw family in the past, and has been considered prior to my tenure for leasing for sand and gravel. The ag lessee on this parcel was the ag lessee at that time as well, and staff were aware of that the ag lessee had some specific concerns. So We took a little extra step in this case and set up a specific meeting with Jerry Shawcroft, our district manager in Southwest, and me and our ag lessee, and talked through what this would mean and specifically the implications to the grazing on the property. The ag lessee expressed disappointment that we would be disturbing this land for sand and gravel mining, but expressed that he would be able to continue to graze the remaining portions of his lease if he had continued access to a gate on the northeast parcel corner of the parcel and a 2-track that runs from the county road across to that gate. So as part of our standard process, staff receive and review mine plans before the lessee implements those, and we will make sure that that these conditions are met during that review process. From a revenue perspective, this lease will have a rent of $800 per year. This is the flat rate that we have for leases that are less than 160 acres in size. Staff looked at royalties in this part of the state and found that $1 a ton is the market rate for sand and gravel in this region. And we're recommending an advanced minimum royalty of $20,000 per year. An advanced minimum royalty is when a lessee will pay an amount upfront each year. That amount is held as a credit against future production. So in this case, they would pay $20,000 and then have a credit of $20,000 for production that comes after that date. Importantly, if that production never comes or that production is less than it takes to exhaust that AMR credit, the board keeps that payment. This is important because it ensures that we receive revenue from the lease, even if no production actually occurs. These numbers result in a minimum revenue of $20,800 annually, but staff anticipate that when this lease is in production, that we will likely receive production royalties in the neighborhood of $65,000 per year. So with that, staff is recommending that the board approve sand and gravel lease 117352 with Rocky Mountain Rock on these 80 acres in Rio Grande County.
I had a question. Generally, I think it applied to the other one too, that clearly it says sand and gravel production area. And there are at least 2 other mines currently producing. So are they getting close to exhausting their supplies, or one wonders about, are we flooding the market with sand and gravel and we should wait a few years, or help me walk through that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to whether the neighboring mines are exhausting. What I do know is one of these neighboring mines, and this is also true in the other case, is a county mine.
Oh.
Typically, those mines do not produce for the market. They produce for the county's internal uses, maintaining roads, things like that. So they are kind of a separate market, if there is such a thing. And frankly, I rely really heavily on our lessees who do this to know their market and their needs and their projections. So I'm confident, given the Wilshaw family's experience, that they believe this is a productive.
I was just curious.
Yeah,
Seemed interesting.
yeah, it's a great question. Right.
Commissioners, any questions? Do we have any questions from the public?
Anybody wishing to make a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom and we will promote you to panelist. Sure, I'm not seeing any hands.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve solid mineral production lease 117352 as described in our board packet.
Thank you.
Second?
Second. Commissioner Chavez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
I thought that flow was great.
Very good work.
Thank you very much, commissioners. Oh, here's your board order. Look at that. We should have gone on to the next slide. That's okay. No modifications.
We
needed,
managed.
so. The good news is I get another whack at this, so I also can process improve.
1 second to get that approved. Share.
All right. Good morning yet again, commissioners. This is Ben Teschner, your solid minerals manager. I'm here to recommend that the board approve solid minerals lease 117353, this one in Conejos County. The photo you see on your screen is an air photo of the area. The lease area in question is basically right in the middle of this at the lower middle of this this photo, and you can see that there are sand and gravel operations in close proximity to this property as well. Yep. This is yet again an opportunity for the State Land Board to produce sand and gravel from another gravel producing area in this part of the world. This property is located in northern Conejos County, very close to the Alamosa County border. In fact, so close that Alamosa County holds a lease with us just south of this lease area for a gravel pit to serve their county, despite that this property is in Conejos County. And we have a few examples of that all around the state. The area shown in yellow is the lease area. And again, you can see, if we zoom in again, we can see the Alamosa County mine located on State Land Board property just south of the proposed lease area, and two private mines, one to the north and one to the south of the State Land Board properties. Also on this map, on the eastern edge of the State Land Board property and the proposed lease area is County Road 9, and that's going to come up again in this presentation. This again is a lease. The lessee on this property would be Rocky Mountain Rock, which, as we discussed in the last item, is owned by John and Jim Wilshaw. This is a company that also owns SLV Earth Movers, and Rocky Mountain Rock is a vertical integration of their family's construction and earth moving company. I'll mention again that this family and company has experience in mine reclamation, which staff view as an asset in them as a lessee. Staff reached out to Conejos County, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and our internal stewardship staff, as well as our other business line managers, which I should have mentioned as well on the previous item, for consultations. Conejos County expressed that they have no concerns with this lease. They also require a conditional use permit and are prepared to receive that application when Rocky Mountain Rock is ready. In this particular location, Parks and Wildlife identified that there could be burrowing owls on this property, which is a species of concern. So we, in this case, we'll place a initial disturbance restriction restricting March 15th through August 31st. If the company would like to do a disturbance in that time window, that's okay. They just need to have somebody come out and confirm that there are no burrowing owls on the property. A qualified person, in fact. There have been no cultural resources surveys conducted on this property to date. We will require a Class 3 cultural resources survey for the areas they plan to disturb. And then speaking with the ag lessee, you perhaps read in your packet that the ag lessee initially requested that the board consider this lease as incompatible with their grazing lease. Staff was able to speak in the time since the packet was published. Staff was able to speak directly with that lessee And they again expressed some disappointment that the area would be considered for gravel mining, but they said they would be able to continue to graze the remaining parts of the property as long as they had continued access through this parcel from that County Road 9. So again, staff is a standard part of our mining leasing program. Staff review mine plans prior to implementation, and so we will ensure that that the ag lessee has continued access from Road 9 through this portion of our property. Exactly the same to the previous lease you saw. This is a 80-acre parcel, and we'll have a flat rate rent of $800 per year as a parcel that is less than 160 acres. It's in the same market area as the previous lease, and staff are recommending a royalty of $1 per ton and an advanced minimum royalty of $20,000 per year. The result of these numbers is that we are looking at a minimum revenue of $20,800 per year, and staff is anticipating that when in production, this lease will earn the school trust around $65,000. With that, staff is recommending the board approve sand and gravel mining lease 117353 with Rocky Mountain Rock on 80 acres in Conejos County. And here is your board order for your convenience.
Comments or questions? For Ben? No?
Any attendees joining us online that would like to address this item on the agenda, please use the raise hand function on Zoom and we will allow you to speak to the board. See no hands.
Okay, do we motion?
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to offer a motion in support of solid mineral production lease 117353 as contained in.
Thank you. Second, Commissioner Chavez. Mr. Chavez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath? Yes. Mr. Scanlon?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
And as noted, we're moving the Lahara final action to the post-executive session spot on the agenda, and so we'll move into policy review. CRP. And there she is.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Rachel Turner, Operations Team Lead for the Colorado State Land Board. The information, or excuse me, the final action item I'm here to present to you today is regarding our Conservation Reserve Program, CRP policy. I don't have a formal presentation for you. All of the information is in your board packet, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. The suggested changes are very minor, mostly stylistic. And yeah, so with that, staff recommends adoption of revised policy. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I said in here, but I was just curious how many of these CRP uses do we see, have we seen? What's the trend?
That's a great question. And they are all on the eastern slope. We have 35 in total. That's both general CRP and grassland CRP.
Oh, for both.
That's roughly 1,300 or 13,000 acres, excuse me, that are managed or have a CRP component to them.
Questions?
No, I mean, I was just concerned about which I just read here, about the approving extensions to fit their program, and the 3 years is adequate, do you think?
It's been working out well, yeah. There was one situation where staff was going to come before the board and ask for an amendment to that for just one specific lease. So if there ever is a time that we need to do that, we'll come before you all. But at this time, yeah, 3 years extension has been working well for the program.
Now, can I check for public comment?
Yes, anybody joining us online that would like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Not seeing any hand raised.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Commissioner Chavez, I move we approve the policy review Modifications at 300-001, Conservation Reserve Program is described in the board package.
Thank you. Second. Second, Commissioner Chavez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath?
Yes.
Inland?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you all for your time.
Nick?
Hi. Commissioners, if you'll indulge me, I'm just gonna sit in my corner, and speak to this request for some policy updating from here. For the record, this is Interim Director Nick Massey, presenting to the board a request to review the Director Performance Review Policy number 200-001 as appears in your board packet. Changes ultimately suggested are minor. They're clarifications and an opportunity to reflect that the universal policy on staff from the Department of Personnel has some impact here, and to clarify essentially a request on how this body and the Executive Director of DNR's office will interact regarding director performance. Some of these things were happening in the background anyway, and it's just helpful to have them in policy. That might be the extent of my comments. I'm happy to entertain any questions. Otherwise, look forward to a vote of support. So
Yes, I have a question regarding this. On the on page 1, in the section that talks about the Division of Human Resources review positions exempt. They're exempted from the state personnel system.
Go ahead. You're winding up. Go ahead.
Well, no, you do.
So can you say more about that?
Yes, and I'm sorry that Wendy Padilla is left because she'd be the person to probably most accurately answer this. But there are two fundamental employment programs in the state. There's the classified program, which most state employees are, and then there's senior executive service. And the senior executive service program has some slight differences in terms of how they're hired and how they're managed. Most director positions of state agencies fall into senior executive service at this stage, which I could go into a little bit more detail, but again, I'll start firing off a little bit off the cuff and potentially make errors. So we can provide you with a lot more information and more accurate information down the road that I can attempt to answer any questions you have.
So this isn't a policy change, just incorporating what exists now within the state.
It is a bit of a policy. It's not changing the nature of the director's position, which has been senior executive service. So it's not changing that concept. It is incorporating the universal policy that addresses senior executive service positions, which wasn't specifically called out in the prior director review policy. So we're aligning this policy with that sort of overarching policy. Also, it became clear that under the previous policy, some of the things that were called for on the policy weren't always happening. And so this is sort of trying to tighten that up a little bit so that the policy language, that the practices are more aligned with the policy language. And mostly that involves communication with DNR about policy, about director reviews.
And actually, that's a point that kind of a little concern or a question I have here about the last point here. The board president will provide a summary of the discussion regarding the commissioner's feedback on the director, which may be incorporated. And, it's just interesting to me that
I have a follow-on, because this is the first time it calls out the Department of Natural Resources review process as well, which we've never been privy to. That's always kind of done on its own. So I have a very similar, I think this is where you're going.
Yeah.
Not to interject. Where do these overlap? Because we solicit our own feedback from senior staff if they want to give it. We have our own conversation about the director's performance, but how does that intersect with the DNR executive director? Or does it, or should it?
Yeah, and here it does state that the executive director of DNR is providing the performance review. And I think I understand that in the bigger picture, but where it says now, and this is not new language, that it may or may not be incorporated, it may not be listened to. It's sort of interesting that way.
Again, probably Wendy, I don't know if Aaron, if you're prepared to address any of these. I don't want to speak for DNR. It may, I'll let you seem to be willing to respond in some form or fashion, so I'll put you on the hot seat.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. Aaron Rice, Director of the Executive Director's Office. Unfortunately, I don't have any information about this, but I would be happy to have Wendy come back to the staff or the board and answer any questions that are.
Yeah, I'm wondering if
We just table this.
it's really,
good.
yeah, is there any pressure here? Because I thought it would, consistent with sort of a number of things about the process of hiring a new director, et cetera, and the commissioners and their role. I think a more fulsome conversation is in order, so I would like to table this.
Well, I agree with that. And I'm curious, because this is a weird shared role. Again, this not weird, but it's different. And I don't know if it's similar to how CPW's director is managed or thought of and the commission is given the opportunity for input. But if I were DNR director, I'd want to know how the commissioners, what they're thinking about the performance of the director, at least in relationship to our role. And how I feel like it should be incorporated, I guess.
Who wrote this? Or modified it, I should say.
I did in conjunction with some DNR input,
Yeah.
Executive Director's Office input. So let me just provide a point of clarification in that last item B. That most of that provision has been there the entire time.
I'm noticing it.
Yes.
This is the green is the revision from
right.
2022. I will take a risk at speaking a little bit out of authority, but my understanding is that feedback from the board was not regularly making its way to the executive director for the performance process. I know that raises eyebrows, but I'm relaying just a piece of information that I was provided.
I think that's accurate. And I'm just wondering for best practice, and Nicole, you should think about this, to be honest with you, as we have some time to review this. Because we always did our own little conversation and got some input from
Yeah, and I
staff.
assumed it was going, because I was aware there was a process with DNR, but I was assuming it was
Somehow.
happening, but
And as concerned, something as mechanical as an employee file, the thing that lives in the employee's file of the division director's file for this division was the responsibility of the executive director of the Department of DNR. So I'm not saying let's stop talking about it. I'm just saying I wanted to provide a bit of a clarification on the record. And I'd be happy to engage the executive director's office to revisit this with us, to listen to the feedback.
I think it's an opportunity to think about what would be best practice. And, it seems silly in the bigger scheme of things, if we have our own discussion and it isn't used or goes anywhere.
Which,
because we do our own conversation with the director on an annual basis from our perspective on their performance, including tracking goals and all, it's a fairly robust conversation. It just feels like then, and we give input that should be shared in a broader sense.
I think it'd be helpful to have, I'm sorry, but to have CPW's policy or any other to kind of compare.
I think, as I understand, that your thoughts are in full alignment with DNR's thoughts, and that one of the things that became clear is that the commissioner review of the director and those thoughts were not, despite the policy, were not making the way its way to DNR. And so despite the intent of the prior policy and what I think you guys are all expressing a desire for the executive director to hear the commissioner's thoughts on the director performance, that connection wasn't happening.
Right.
And so
and then it's up to the executive director to do with that what they will. I understand their role as the actual supervisor.
Would the executive director want to join in with us and do reviews?
Yeah.
So I think in short, really what this is this has been in a transition stage after a long-serving director. And it's a great opportunity for a conversation. So I think rather than taking an action on this, let's maybe arrange the conversation, whether it's all commissioners with Wendy and Van Gibbs, or, it's kind of more about.
And I would like Nicole to
And
put into
Nicole
this.
too.
You're the one who will,
Right.
this is about your
But I
role.
think having discussion to understand, so everyone has the same understanding of the process would be
Yeah.
really useful, and it's a very timely thing. So let's see if we can't get a meeting or I guess it's a.
And
Well,
just
we
as
could-
long as we're raising points, I would also question, and I guess this is for staff. It says here, there may be an anonymous feedback for agency staff about the director's performance. Does that currently happen?
Yes.
There is an anonymous one?
To be fair, I don't know that I would label it as anonymous. For me, as a member of senior staff, I have been approached by board leadership consistently for input on my relationship, both working and otherwise professional with the director. And I trust that my feedback has been used in a helpful way. And I think that's happened consistently for my tenure.
No, I think what I was thinking about was, is there a process where all staff have an opportunity to provide anonymous feedback?
I would say officially, no.
Yeah.
There isn't
There's no boss out there.
There's
No.
sort of, yeah.
That's what, this is in the old
Well,
policy.
this was for, like, when I did this, I'd reach out to the senior team and just say, hey, this is not required, but if you want to give feedback, I will incorporate it into our conversation with Bill. And that's how that worked. And you always had the opportunity to say, hey, I don't really want my name attached to this, but I think it's important to do that. No one ever did that, but I would respect them if they wanted to. And, but it never extended beyond the senior leadership that and I don't think it's appropriate for this commission to ask the entire staff for their feedback. I think it's the leadership team that is relevant to our work.
Commissioner Keith, just to your question specifically, staff have maintained a sort of an anonymous path for input between essentially senior staff and all other staff. I don't want to make a distinction between those two, between people, but there has been a tool in place, and we would occasionally remind staff that was out there. But nothing so deliberate as to say, hey, staff, this is an opportunity for you to provide an honest input about your relationship with the director, perhaps for use in some way. That has not been that deliberate. So.
May I recognize Aaron Rea, who might have an update or an opinion or something to share?
Thank you, Chair. if it's the board's pleasure to take some more time to dig into this, the executive director's office would be happy to support that in any way. I just did want to note that Wendy Padilla has rejoined virtually, and so if there are specific questions that you want to address now that unfortunately I'm not able to address, you do have that resource. So whatever your preferred approach is.
Okay, so you're saying Wendy is online, can't read. Okay.
So just in concept, I support the idea of tabling this, and it sounds like we need some conversation, not necessarily in this formal setting, but prior to that to determine what we want to cover.
I think everyone associated can talk amongst themselves with DNR, but you've heard some of our feedback around, hey, I think we would like to be able to provide feedback into the executive director's review from our perspective.
And Wendy, I do have a question for you. Does the state in its performance review systems for both levels, does it have a regular 360-degree review process at any interval?
Thanks for the question, Chair Frobe. And just for the record, my name is Wendy Padilla. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Department of Natural Resources. And to answer your question, the state does have a very structured 360 review process that's run through our employee assistance program that includes executive or high-level coaching for those undergoing the review. And we don't encourage kind of informal 360 review processes without that formal process, because what that does is it allows everyone involved to understand the sideboards and then for the feedback to be as effective as possible.
Yes, and so that's not necessarily a regular component of every employee's review, but it is a component that may be activated at a given time for a given situation. Okay. Great. So I think what you're hearing is it might be useful to have a conversation. We can figure out just more broadly about the working together between the land board commissioners and the DNR on directors with Nicole. So maybe we can figure that out.
I'm not entirely sure what the commissioners are conceiving in that conversation. I would note that if 2 commissioners are going to participate or more, if it's going to be full, then that's a public meeting, which would probably happen in July. Or if what you're contemplating.
Do we need a meeting, or do we just empower you all to, you've heard what we said. We would like, if possible, our input to feed into the executive director's review process. I think, isn't that what we're really saying?
Yes, I think there are some other.
I think that's exactly like the policy as written and as modified.
Well, it says it may be considered. It may be.
Yeah.
Just more than certain shall, is that what you're saying?
Well, we can't do that without a conversation with DNR, I don't think, just to be fair.
So I'd like to recommend we table this, and then I think just one person, so I'd like to say, I think it would be useful to sit down, Wendy, with you, Nicole. I don't know who else, just to talk through.
That's fair.
Sort of how we work together.
Very good.
Does that work? Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Definitely.
Thank you. And thanks for hopping back online. Appreciate it.
Okay. And that was
Do we need a motion to table?
Yes, because it's a final action. I think we'd probably do that would be tidy.
So Madam Chair, if so, I move that the board table the conversation on policy review, director performance review 200-001.
Second.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chavez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Heath? Yes. Mr. Scanlon?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for the
Yeah,
discussion.
that was a good conversation. I've always been a little muddled on that. So that was helpful.
Andy?
Good morning, commissioners. Andy Bissett for the Transactions and Record Services team. Here to present the board leasing agenda for June. This month we have 5 items. 2 are competitive bids and 3 are new leases. We have 1 ag and 1 rec bid on the agenda, and we have 2 ag and 1 right-of-way new leases on the agenda. If there are any questions, staff's happy to provide an answer, but staff does recommend approval of the June 2025 board leasing agenda.
Any questions? Any public comment?
Anybody attending online that would like to take a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function and we will move you over. Not seeing any hands raised, Commissioner.
Okay, great. I actually did have one quick question. Sandy, was on Bear Creek, recognizing that we have a different model. Was Carrizo Creek the one who did it on the short-term basis? Were they our lessees? They're our current lessees? It's clear. Okay. All right. May I have a vote? I mean, a motion, sorry.
I move that we approve the board leasing agenda as presented in the board.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you for the second. Commissioner Chavez, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath?
Yes.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you. And thank you, Andy. All right, and the minutes from the executive session last month for the director interviews. Does anybody have any changes to those, modifications, questions?
I'm sure I know Rachel's not here, but I want to commend her for making these adaptations where she did in fact include in the minutes response. It's very good.
Thank you for that acknowledgement.
And I hope we'll convey that to her because I'm.
Oh, you bet. She was nervous about it and
Yeah, no.
let's take a swing and she'll be really excited to hear that it was well received.
Great, so I'm going to say the minutes for the director interviews and the minutes for the board meeting. So very aptly presented. Having no changes or modifications will be adopted by acclamation. Okay. Now, I believe we are going to move into executive session with Ed's facilitation.
Yeah, so based on the way we've lined things out, folks listening along online mentioned this early in the meeting and repeating it here.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yep.
I mean, there's no reason to go into executive session and then, well, we can't come back because you're gonna have another
Yeah.
decision. I just wondered if you wanted to hit the staff report and the DNR update on 1332 before
I guess
executive
Kelly is
session.
here. Yeah. To do that.
Um,
Another revision. We can do that, yes. So let's proceed to staff report and then the DNR update. And not delay our executive session.
Oh, that's me. I'm sorry. Well, I mean, the staff report reflects a very busy staff as usual. Lots of energy around getting us to today, for that matter, and the vote for our new director. Want to point out just a couple of the things that put big smiles on folks' faces. The bird banding station at Chico Basin Ranch came together beautifully. What a cool facility. What a beautiful building. Really cool partnership with University of Colorado to design and build that facility. And it looks great. And then we had staff invited down to celebrate the completion of the project, or I think it was nearly complete at that time, but essentially the completion. So it's live, it's going.
And I did have a follow-up question on that, in that it did seem like such a cool program, and now we've seen the evidence of it. And I just wonder if staff is considering, other opportunities where we might engage that team or other projects, leasehold improvements or what have you. So,
Eve, we'll look to you. You're online. I'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, Abe Medina, Recreation Program Manager with the State Land Board. That's correct. Yeah, we're continuing to explore opportunities to partner with CU Denver team on other projects elsewhere that might make sense. And I can say, we may come to the board in the future for additional projects.
Right.
Thanks, Abe. And I mean, Abe's here too, and largely responsible for the other item I was going to mention, which was a staff outing to one of the yurts in State Forest State Park, and folks had a really great time. And yeah, Abe, if you wanted to say a couple of words about some cool things that happened, or you're welcome to. I didn't ask you in advance, but
No, happy to share some
This is a
details
little
on that.
scary asking what cool things happened.
Again, A Medina, Recreation Program Manager. Yeah, we about 9 of us from staff stayed overnight at the 7 Utes Yurt. It's a concessionaire owned building on the state forest. The concession contract is with CPW, but as the commissioners know, the state forest in its entirety, the 72,000 acres there, are all state trust land, benefiting multiple beneficiaries. We went up, stayed overnight, and engaged in some training by the Colorado Mountain School, who's the concessionaire that runs the yurt. They took us on a short hike around the yurt, and actually worked on some leadership type skills with the team. I think personally, I think one of the coolest experiences was as we were sitting outside the yurt in the morning, getting ready to go on our hike. Somebody noticed that a small bear, had probably put its muddy footprints on the side of the yurt canvas, and was probably interested in what was going on inside, or smelled the good cooking from the dinner or the breakfast that we had there. But it's a beautiful location, beautiful facility, and hopefully in the future, on a future board tour, we might be able to stop there and use the facility for either a workshop or a board meeting. It's a nice place, a great place to be, and a great partnership with CPW on that property.
pretty cool. And I didn't really have any other comments from staff.
Thank you. Good to see Matthew. And Kelly, we're looking forward to hearing from you.
She's got a slide deck in the board folder, so jump over to Chrome. Because it's a see the first folder, the first tab up there is the presentations folder. And it's a couple slides at the end.
Can you admit it?
I can certainly do that.
Well, thank you, commissioners. For the record, my name is Kelly Romero Heaney.
We just shared
1 second.
Oh,
apologies.
For the record, I'm the Deputy Policy Director for the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. Rather than bury the lead, I will only be in this position for the rest of the month. I'll be leaving DNR to go be Deputy City Manager for the City of Steamboat Springs. Right?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But today I'm here just to give you all an overview of House Bill 25-1332. And so you can run the slides. Let me have my notes here, so my apologies. This is a little funky. Great. So today I'm just going to give an overview of the bill that passed, run through just a high-level summary of the work group study requirements, also some considerations that were built into the bill, highlight the group membership, the significant group membership, as you'll see, the timeline and the next steps. So the bill, of course, was introduced and passed during the 2025 General Assembly session. It was led by a coalition of conservation organizations who also, collaborated with the department, with DNR, and interested stakeholders, prime sponsors, Representative McCormick, Senator Roberts, and Senator Wallace. Sorry, my apologies. So quick. So the bill requires various appointing authorities to appoint members to and for DNR to convene a state trust lands work group to study opportunities to advance conservation, climate resilience, biodiversity, and then sustainable, equitable, and low conflict recreation. The study requirements are actually fairly detailed and significant in the bill. So if you want to dig into it further, I recommend that you refer to the 16-page bill, but just kind of like high-level summary of some of the requirements for the work group for what they should be looking at is, how to promote long-term productivity and sound stewardship on state land board lands, with an emphasis on agricultural production, preserving and enhancing the beauty, natural values, open space, wildlife on state land board lands, identifying recreational opportunities, low conflict recreational opportunities, identifying parcels that had unique recreational, conservation, agricultural opportunities, reviewing parcels to advance conservation, climate resiliency, water resources, or habitat connectivity, looking at parcels for long-term disposition for state parks or state wildlife areas, or for school children to participate in outdoor recreation or learning on state trust lands, and also high-value lands for climate resilient conservation and recreation. Also, the work group will be reviewing standards for future leases for the stewardship trust parcels, and then also looking at opportunities to improve public engagement, for state land board, for the state land board going forward, including through increased engagement with local governments, state federal agencies, and then our tribal nations and stakeholders. The next one. So a few key things that the work group will have to consider is making sure that recommendations are aligned with Section 10 of Article 9 of the state constitution. Also, surely, aligning with state land board's fiduciary responsibilities. They have to make sure that they are protective of existing leases on state trust lands, and that they will support the multi-use management approach on state land board lands going forward. The work group will have to consider public input. Of course, it's a public process. The meetings will be available to public, follow open meetings laws, but there will also be additional stakeholder engagement opportunities built into the process. And then finally, the recommendations need to align with the Colorado Outdoor Strategy, which is stewarded by Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I'm not sure, Nick, if the board has, if you all have had a presentation on the outdoor strategy. I believe you have, but for content.
Presentation or we.
Okay. No, you had not.
I think that would actually be useful. I do too. Very important.
Oh, great. Sounds good. All right, so moving on to membership. Like I said, this is a very large work group, 31 members. 10 of them are technical advisors, largely state agencies in that category, including DNR, who is responsible for convening the work group. State Land Board will have a technical advisory role, as will CPW. Then there are these different appointments. I won't run through all of these. You all could either check the bill, or I'm happy to share my slides. But you can see there's a number of appointments that the Speaker of the House will have to make. The Majority Leader, the House Minority Leader, Senate Majority Leader, Senate Minority Leader. The Governor makes a handful of appointments, and then CCIA also will be responsible for making an appointment from the American Indian Community, Greater American Indian Community. They had a presentation on this bill last week, and so they will have their next meeting on September 4th, right before these appointments are due by September 5th. And then similarly, the Ute Mountain Ute and Southern Ute tribes have the opportunity to appoint someone to this work group should they choose. Oh, real quick note on that, the large number of members, the board does stipulate that the department can or has to hire a facilitator, thank goodness. Which of course we'll be doing. And in fact, we're just getting the procurement process started for that, to hire a contractor that can help facilitate the work group and help with drafting of the reports.
So we'll hire the facilitator, or the group will hire the facilitator?
The Department of Natural Resources will, since we're responsible for convening it. So the contract will run through us. All right, so timeline on deliverables, like I noted, September 5th is when all the appointments must be made, and the work group can convene after that. And then on February 1st, there's an interim deadline for the State Land Board, and I believe this will largely be staff that accomplishes this, to review existing leases on long-term stewardship trust parcels, to provide a report on the leases that have been denied for stewardship trust parcels in the past. It will include documentation of lease stipulations that highlight measures to protect and enhance beauty, open space, natural values, and wildlife habitat. And then finally, analysis of public recreation access and management solutions on state trust lands in other states. So that'll be due on February 1st. On March 16th, the work group has to provide an interim report with recommendations for the long-term stewardship, long-term stewardship of stewardship trust parcels and the internal improvements and saline trusts. And then finally, the big report, the final report with work group recommendations, will be due to the governor, the House Ag Committee, Senate Ag Committee, you all, and then to the executive director of DNR on September 1st of 2026. And then by February 15th, 2027, you all will need to consider the recommendations of the work group and adopt policies and rules that have that include certain minimums that are spelled out in the bill itself. Again, they're quite detailed, so I won't go into all of that today. And with that, I'll just close with saying, DNR sees this is a big effort. There's going to be a lot of players. It's also a huge opportunity for the State Land Board to look at opportunities to advance conservation, recreation, climate resilience, and then unique agricultural opportunities as well. And so, looking forward to taking questions if you have any. And I would say I'm looking forward to working with you all on it. But again, sorry to be saying goodbye. Thank you.
Kelly, do you remember, and I think Nick had indicated previously that within this bill, I think there is an allocation of funds from the monies that we make to support this process, not just the facilitation. Can you remember what that amount was?
Roughly 500,000, I think was appropriation.
And it's for state land board money.
It's from our money,
Trust revenues,
but at least it's the legislature has then allocated that money to support the process. So some of it certainly would go to a facilitator, but there would certainly be other funds available should we need more data, should we need, things to support the process.
Yeah, the appropriation that came with the bill included an approval for an addition to staff, full-time, ongoing, as well as another part-time resource. So we'll have some extra horsepower to help get some of the work done that's put on State Land Board. A chunk of it was intended for the facilitation costs. And yeah, it was thoughtful about needing perhaps to buy data, buy computing power. The analytics that go into it can be covered through the provision of the appropriation.
Got it. I think that'll be important. I think that.
And maybe just to clarify, it was about just shy of $400,000 is what was allocated in the bill, and then it accounts for an additional 1.6 FTE in the
0.6
1.6 for the state land.
That's a full-time and a part-time.
So, Madam Chair, I have a question. So, Kelly, how did this come about?
I think there has been a lot of interest in exploring opportunities for conservation and recreation on state trust lands. There certainly was some interest from, different conservation organizations like the Nature Conservancy, Western Resource Advocates, and others. So I know they had got the conversation started early, but eventually it led to this bill. I think that answers the question.
It doesn't.
That's fair.
I feel like this is the first official mention of this at a state land board meeting. And the fact that there would have been no communication whatsoever through the DNR office or even through the governor's office, I think is highly inappropriate. And I want to express that here. I mean, we are working partners on many of these issues, but the fact that there was never any official conversation about this or information about this, I think is really unfortunate.
Madam Chair, happy to respond to that.
Please.
No, I appreciate that frustration. This bill was approved really late in the session, so it did move quickly. I'll note that it wasn't a DNR priority bill, so we weren't leading the stakeholding on it. I believe it got late bill approval sometime in April. So I know it's hard, things move quickly in the cadence of the legislature. But my apologies that the state land board commissioners didn't feel like an opportunity to engage.
Yes, I think following up on Commissioner Heath's comment, I think what it points out is there's been sort of a vacuum, information vacuum between DNR and things that might be going on that DNR knows about that are not coming to the commissioners, or maybe to the director for that matter. I don't know. But I think that looking forward, and these bills, both this one and the other one, the impact investing, if you will, community investing, have big implications and could benefit from more of the expertise around this organization. So you're here as the messenger, but it has caused us to really, think about how do we, and Nicole's going to be taking on a lot of this responsibility, but we really want to enhance and become a much more meaningful partner with DNR in a way that's really constructive and helps everyone make better decisions and produces better legislation and things like that. So I think Josie articulated it well, but she speaks for all the commissioners of, there's these rumors of things and all of a sudden there's a bill, and it wasn't even that the bill got passed late. It was just something going that the fact that it would be turning into a bill so quickly, that it was on that kind of trajectory was really the confusion that we felt.
I think what Commissioner Heath is, what's the genesis of this? Well, where did it come from? Or whose original thoughts? The conservation.
The proponents, you mean?
The proponents.
And even to clarify further, I think open discussion, there are many of these things we're very interested in too. And so when it comes sort of in this manner, it implies things that perhaps were not intended, but it doesn't bode well for a good working relationship. And I think we can certainly remedy that. We want to be partners. There are many issues on this. So when I'm saying Genesis, what was his name? What was her name? I don't mean that. I just mean if there's obviously a feeling that's implied with the legislators that somehow we were not open to many of these things. And I think that's unfortunate.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I really.
This is your favorite last conversation.
No, I actually do appreciate the sentiment. And I think that DNR does want to be a strong partner with the State Land Board and with the commissioners. And I'll bring this message back to, or this information back to Executive Director Gibbs. We're happy to engage in dialogue with you all. I think one thing that is a challenge is we don't typically work on legislation our boards and commissions, and there's a variety of reasons for that. And I know that that's sort of called out in our DNR boards and commissions policy handbook. Part of it is, you know, we have to work through the governor. You know, ultimately we have to support the direction of the governor on legislation. But you know, as things are in the interim and there's ideas being thrown around, I think it's always great to have that dialogue. But in this particular case, I'll also note this just was not a DNR bill. Where we were just the stakeholder engaging on it. Now the governor, you know, did sign it and was supportive, but it can be very challenging for us to work with boards and commissions on the cadence. The boards and commissions meet, and then given how legislation develops.
I don't think we don't need to be a part of the bill process necessarily. I think just being briefed about it would have been helpful by anybody, you know, in terms of intent of the bill, what they were working on and why, and the status. And I'm hoping during this the facilitated process, we'll get updated briefings on how it's going, how the conversations are evolving. And, you know, I'm assuming, Nicole, you'll be at every meeting. Maybe it's just part of a director's report, honestly. But I recognize that we are not someone who was perceived as a stakeholder in the stakeholder engagement process, whatever that was being done by whoever was leading that effort. But we heard a lot of rumors that were not particularly helpful as to intent. And I think it would have been, it's just a lesson learned, you know, just dispelling where things were at, what the process was. This went from a working group to, frankly, a huge group. And, you know, the evolution of it, I think would have been helpful as even a part of the DNR updates. We get tons of updates on other bills, to be honest with you, and how they're progressing through the system. And while this wasn't a DNR agenda bill, it certainly has big implications on a DNR agency. So I think it's just a lesson learned. And then we could quiz Aaron Ray endlessly every meeting, and, you know, Tim Brass and other folks, but we really felt like we just didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, no.
Or else we heard it from a lot of other sources from then people we should have heard it from.
Right.
And that's a movie reference. If we know the John Wick story, it seemed like we're under the table.
Okay, that might be.
And I do think of one quick takeaway on this is that understanding, you know, a DNR is tracking and managing its legislative agenda. And this was something that's happening over there, but interestingly, has lots of implications for DNR, CPW, ourselves. So it does point up a crack in the system where something that isn't being run by DNR that has huge implications was maybe not, that ball was being fumbled or not being passed or whatever. So but thank you. Yes, you have.
I was gonna say, maybe one thing I could offer is, you know, our legislative director, Daphne Gervais, she's always happy to provide a legislative update. So, or, you know, our staff can make sure that we're providing updates on key legislation, not just DNR's priorities, but legislation that might impact the state land board. So we can make sure that we're providing those updates. I think, again, the challenge is when you have a late bill in April. I don't know when the state land board have, if you met in April or not. I suppose you
meet every month.
But yeah, that's something that we could remedy in the future.
And honestly, this was percolating for months before that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know the late bill didn't happen. We didn't have bill language, but there certainly were ongoing conversations. All of us got phone calls. Like, have you heard about this? Do you know what's going on and who's talking about this? And that is what's not helpful, is when our answer is no, we don't know anything about it.
And furthermore, you know, some of the implications have great implications for staff. And, you know, I feel like if in the future, it isn't just a monthly update. When anything comes that impacts State Land Board Director should be informed of. We're not talking about individual commissioners, but we are representing that. And I think the communication on this is really vital as we move into this next year and the working committee. So I guess
Well,
that's how I.
And I'll put a pin on it. I got a call from an organization who was thinking about whether to support this or not, and they wanted to know the commissioner's view of it. I mean, so it's not like we are not impacted by this. And I candidly had to answer, I don't know. You know, and it's not, we don't have a position because we don't know anything about, we haven't had a conversation. And those kind of calls actually do happen, and it's not in anyone's interest to just have us kind of not. And you poor thing, you showed up today.
I
Here, but
I'm
I
good.
think it's also, this is, you know, a new start. We have a new director. We have this process that will be ongoing. We'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, and with Nicole on board, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more conversations as you're onboarding with DNR staff and whatnot. And Kelly, I did have a question. You referenced a manual and actually some guidelines that I've never heard of. Shame on me, I guess. But this, what did you call the Boarding Commission's Handbook or something?
Yes,
We had a briefing.
yeah,
We had-
Wendy Padilla provided a briefing on that probably approximately a year ago. And you'll be having it again in July as we onboard new members, including part of that presentation. And I think this aligned with the last time it happened was the what we refer to as the 1192 training that
Oh,
goes
yeah.
through open records and open meetings.
Yeah, but it didn't talk about about the challenges or that we're not actually really supposed to be involved in legislation. So now I know what
can't
you're.
recall the specifics on that particular topic, but yes.
So anyway, so that training is related to that handbook.
That's right.
Got it.
So, and finally, and I'm sure you're hoping finally.
No.
I think we can be a resource. And so it's not as if we were going to counter certain things, we can be a resource. And I think that that's the tone that I hope we will accept as we move forward on what could be a very transformational year as we learn more about expectations.
Appreciate that. Happy to relay that information back to Executive Director Gibbs.
And I'm sure fleeing to Steamboat now.
Like a great idea.
Running for the hills. No, not at all. It's been such a pleasure. You know, having the opportunity to work with y'all even just a little bit, and on that field tour up around Steamboat last summer, really enjoyed that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you, and
this and your
best-
past days
best of
of
luck.
association. We appreciate it.
Well,
Well,
that essentially brings us to what we have left being the executive session and the one action item. Logistically, this is where we need to essentially close down the first version of the meeting for the day. And then restart it as a practice session that will allow us to absolutely control attendance and who's listening along online. For the executive session, and then we'll reopen it to the public to be yet again a public session for one remaining item. So I want to say clearly a couple of times, folks listening along online, if you are in attendance to participate in the final action item of the agenda, being the Lahara transfer, you are going to need to rejoin the meeting after we end this version of it. You can re-access the meeting using the links that got you here in the first place. The links to the meetings won't change. It's not a separate meeting. It's just a duplicate of the one we're already doing. Probably reasonable to think that the executive session may last around 20 minutes, but that's not a promise. It's just a thought. And in the meantime, if you're listening along as an attendee, while we're in executive session, you will be greeted with a waiting room. you'll be greeted with a message that looks something like, please wait until the meeting host starts the webinar or something like that. So I'm just being really clear that we're trying to be as transparent and accommodating as possible. If you are here, if you would like to be part of the Lahara item, you will need to rejoin. You're welcome to do that immediately upon seeing the end message for this meeting. And you will be greeted with a waiting room for a matter of approximately 20 minutes while we're in executive session. So if you're not rejoining us, thank you for being part of our festivities today. And we look forward to being part of your life in a month's time as well. So, Alec, if you end our meeting.
Wow. Right before we end the meeting.
Yeah, I think so too. So, and
Commissioners,
what's the lunch timing thing?
before we get to lunch, before we step up, my attorney has reminded me that there's an opportunity for us to set the record about going into executive on this recording.
Yes, or again, not only the technology, if you can just pause this for the break, come back on the public record portion to build the record for going into executive session, then go into your practice session. If that works, that's fine. If it's easiest for me to build the record, go into executive session, acknowledge that we're going to have a break before we actually have the executive session discussion. That's the awkward part on my end, but we can.
The latter is more
okay
workable for us on the tech side.
Okay, then that's what we will do. Good morning, commissioners. It's been a long day. My name is Ed Hamrick. I'm an assistant attorney general, and I represent the State Board of Land Commissioners. And my computer signed me out on that long walk. But we're here this morning to request to go. I'm going to do this by memory.
Just wing it. Extemporaneously.
We're here this morning to request to go into executive session to discuss Lahara property matters in Conneaut County. This matter has been noticed for a property matter discussion authorized under 24-6-402-3A1. Which allows for the discussion of transactions involving real property that the premature disclosure of information would have an adverse impact on the trust interest. Also knowing the nature of this discussion, it's not technical, it hasn't been noticed specifically for attorney-client communication, but I do anticipate there's a possibility that there will be questions regarding the land board's rights under leases and statutes regarding agricultural leasing, and therefore, to the degree it touches upon those matters, it would be authorized for executive session for attorney-client communication regarding specific legal questions under 24-6-402-3A 2 and 3 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. So at this point, I would request a motion to go into executive session as authorized by statute to discuss Lahara property matters.
So moved.
Second. Thank you for that. Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Heath?
Yes.
Commissioner Scanlon? Yes. Chair votes yes.
Okay, so from there, we're gonna break this down. We could take
Interim Director Massey's comments. We're going to take a 10-minute break. we'll reconvene for executive session, which will still last about 20 minutes. So for folks who are wanting to jump back on the meeting, I would anticipate about 30 minutes from now.
Thank you. Just click end in the bottom right corner. And